Morning and welcome back to the NRG Team at 10K in St. Paul, Minnesota. I'm Joe Lissette, hosting for Nerd Rage Gaming, and we have got Legacy, Modern, and Pioneer semifinals and finals finishing up from yesterday. If you were with us before, thanks for coming back around. We've got the team event for 2 rounds this morning, and then we'll pick up the Modern 5K, which starts in an hour and will go all day long. Full house, 120 teams yesterday for the team event, 300 player cap today for Modern. So plenty of magic. Players came out, the Midwest represented. Thanks for showing up to watch. Everyone that's in the building to play, hopefully having a good time. Judges are ready. The booth is ready. The staff is ready. Drake Sasser's here. He's ready. Let's go ahead and bring him in.
Absolutely, Joe. I am fired up this morning.
All right. Good morning. You're
Good
back in
morning.
action. Sticking around. Now you're gonna be with us for a while today. We just had a brief preview of Drake's awesome memes, personality, strategy, everything he had yesterday. Today he's gonna be with us for a good chunk of the day. Drake, thanks for being here. The players are ready. We have a bracket. Let's top 4 teams have made it this far. Let's go ahead and show you who they are. You can see here the number 1 overall seeds, Andrew Ellenbogen, Max McVitie, and Clay Spickelmeyer. They're going to be facing, we're going to be watching the Molbach and the Carlson brothers versus Ellenbogen's team. That's what we're going to watch. We're going to start with Legacy. Uh, we have Jesse Robkin, Zoe Riederman, and Zach Allen made it through as the 6th seed versus Daniels, Silverberg, and Covalenti. We'll get to them when we have time. But first, the players are waiting for us. Let's go ahead and go to the number 1 versus number 4 seeds and kick this day off. So you can see the names and the archetypes there on the screen. Is it Delver versus Burn in Legacy is where we're going to begin.
Beautiful. This is another classic matchup in the Legacy format. Burn been a deck for a long time, and as has Delver. So I imagine both of these players have played this matchup plenty of times. Clay here on the right, leading off with a Volcanic Island into a Delver of Secrets. One of the better starts in the Burn matchup. You really need to get some pressure out early if you hope to race the aggressive starts the Burn deck can have.
Right. Let's go ahead and get this overlay straightened up. It is reversed right now. Apologies for that. And a Goblin Guide comes in for
I think
Nick.
we're considering a
Classic
daze. I
start.
like this daze a lot with no removal spell for sure. You need to
Yeah.
really, like I said, it's all about a race here. And the burn deck, I promise, is a lot better at being aggressive. So Delver, in general, I think a little behind when racing. Looks like an upkeep draw is going to happen before the Delver trigger. The Delver trigger finds a land and is not going to be able to flip off that, as here comes a Ponder.
Yeah, Ponder Nice guaranteeing the Delver flip next turn, hopefully for Spickelmeyer's sake. He certainly knows the ins and outs of the matchups. As we heard Andrew say yesterday when we interviewed him, that Clay plays Delver basically exclusively in Legacy, so he really should know what's going on here. Versus Burn, really one thing that he's going to need to manage are non-basic lands in play, as Price of Progress is a card that can do a lot or it can do very little depending on how Clay plays into it.
Yeah, when you talk about the things that you actually have agency over in this matchup, right? Because there's a lot of starts Burn can have where they just have a flurry of burn spells and you just die to that. And there's not a lot you can do about it. But the things that you can control, things like, like you said, managing how many lands you put into play. If you're going to put a lot of lands into play, you need to do tricks like put a wasteland into play to threaten to wasteland yourself. These are the kinds of edges that you can give yourself in a matchup that can feel hopeless in some certain spots. And here is a Brainstorm as Delver is now dead. Searing Blaze, a really, really good play out of Nick. Being able to manage the threat and get some burn points across is going to matter a lot as we see if Clay can find another threat to continue to race here.
Yeah, and really, I mean, the more turns, like we know what Nick Carlson is going to draw. He's going to draw burn spells. So Clay needs to get this game going. There's only so many things he can realistically counter. He did get away with the 1 days early, but probably, I mean, we see a Force Will in his hand. And it's probably going to be Force or Bust. Now, here's like something like a Lava Spike. I mean, that's great and all. The first one seems kind of anemic, doesn't do much, but the 5th, 6th one, well, that ends the game.
That's lethal. Absolutely. We see a Force Will in the hand. If I'm Clay, I think I really want to fire this off pretty aggressively. You can see a Murktide there pulled all the way to the left. That is a huge pickup for the Delver deck in this matchup when you compare how it is stacked up across the years that Legacy has been a format. The burn deck traditionally is kind of considered to be a little ahead in the matchup, but with these big threats that the Delver deck got out of the Modern Horizons 2 format, like Murktide Regent, they can close the game a lot faster than they could previously. And Murktide
Mhm.
Regent, obviously a very impressive blocker, hard to burn spell down, like we saw the Delver of Secrets get taken care of. So, like I said, I think Clay is really sitting here thinking about Force of Willing, whereas he might want to save it for something like a Fire Blast or a big spell, just because, it really helps get a Murktide Regent out and make it very big to close the game fast. So I think we're seeing a little bit of combat math being done here by Clay
Yeah.
Spickelmeyer.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I definitely agree with you there. It is nice to be able to just kind of play even, and then save your Force of Will for the Fire Blast at the end. So the burn players all in, they sack their lands, you counter the Fire Blast, and then it's over. But as you suggested, Clay does, after some thought, take out the Goblin Guide here, um, pitching Expressive Iteration, so keeping Murktide Brainstorm.
Yeah, I like this
Expressive
play a
Iteration
lot.
often leads to a third land drop, so that might be uh, in vein of playing around Price of Progress. That might be the reason why that is less valuable in this case to him than the actual Brainstorm itself.
Right. And we did see a draw there. Clay had brainstormed, elected not to fetch away the cards. Looks like he picked up the second copy of Expressive Iteration, maybe floated the second one in case he
Mm-hmm.
needed to force. So heads up play by Clay there. Going to go ahead and brainstorm, be able to grab a Volcanic Island, kept the basic island in hand so we can go ahead and get another spell in the yard before we cast our Murktide Regent, hoping to delve out for the largest possible. We can see him very quickly play that land, and looks like we're going to see 5 spells pretty quickly pulled to the front, I have to
Yeah, I
imagine.
would think, yeah, this is definitely not one where Clay wants to waste any time. I suppose clockwise, 7 versus 8 is effectively the same, but maybe Nick will use multiple fetch lands, or as he has just shown Eidolon, maybe Eidolon will force him to take some damage on his own, so the 8 power will actually matter.
Well, neat trick here, Joe, is with that 8/8 Murktide Regent, right? So Nick's at 19. If
Mhm,
Clay finds a fourth land as a fetch land, he can fetch a Mystic Sanctuary, pull a spell out of his graveyard, and then suddenly it's a 9/9. And then if Nick ever cracks that fetch, he's dead immediately. So
mhm.
there's a little bit of a trick we can make to pump the clock up just enough to be relevant. But this Eidolon could still be pretty annoying in the face of a Murktide Regent with Clay all the way down to 8.
Yeah, so Clay with a Daze in the hand here is actually considering dazing here just to force Nick to break the fetch land and actually go to 18 so that a fetch land off the top for the sanctuary would actually increase the size and maybe increase the clock. Now, that wouldn't actually turn on right away because it does reduce Clay's land count in play. But yeah, we can see here Nick dropping to 18 off of that Arid Mesa.
Well, the Eidolon itself is going to do some amount of work, right? Because
Yeah,
Nick needs to cast another spell at least in
right.
order to win this race. And so if he does, then as we can see, Clay also gets to pick up one of the non-basics. Now a Price of
Mhm.
Progress is only a shock, and that could win the race for Clay. So maybe Clay kind of trying to get Nick locked under his own Eidolon as we see
Yeah,
a crunch across for 2, putting Clay down to a pretty precarious 6. But Murktide Regent doing a good job racing here. Days
yeah.
not going to add a lot to the mix though.
Yeah, and in fact, at this point, Nick is locked out, like you're saying, of perhaps any non-Fire Blast spell. Fire Blast looks like it would win the game.
Yeah, Fire Blast is the card here. Do we have it? It looks like we do not. Clay
There's no
gonna
reason to hold back on that here.
yeah. Clay kind of thinking about what is it that wins?
Yep.
Nothing. Okay, here you go. Bonk. And we see Murktide Regent very aggressively take down game 1 here.
Mhm.
Like I said, like Murktide Regent, you really got to see the power
Yeah.
that card has in the matchup in 2022 Magic, right? Like Legacy, has taken a lot of shapes and sizes, even if the archetypes have remained fairly constant. There's a lot of churn with what cards are being played. And Murktide Regent was a huge pickup in this matchup, and we got to see why right there. Very, very exemplary case study there.
Yeah. All right. We're gonna switch over to modern for the other Carlson versus Andrew Ellenbogen. This four color
The
mirror. We anticipated that this match would probably draw out, take some time, although it looks like Andrew with 2 planeswalkers to 0 for Matt Carlson.
Is that a red
Seems
emblem too? Oh
oh,
yeah. Oh,
okay.
okay.
Well, you know
Right.
what?
This game doesn't look long for this
No, it
world.
does not. Renin 6
Alrighty then.
Ultimate allows Andrew to utilize all his instances of sorceries in the graveyard now have retrace. So at the cost of discarding a land, he can recast everything. And this isn't flashback. These spells don't get exiled when you use them. So he can,
We can just keep doing this with an
yeah.
expressive iteration in hand. That's an expressive iteration basically every turn for the rest of the game. That
Mhm.
seems pretty powerful to me, Joe.
Yes, indeed. And with the Turret Time Reveler protecting, yeah, Andrew can do anything he wants. on his turn, on Matt's turn, and if you're on Matt's side, I don't know that there's a real plan you can formulate to fight against a Red and 6 ultimate.
Yeah, Joe, I think I'm under the impression that because these rounds are untimed, I think Matt here is more or less just trying to get more information. I can't imagine that Matt is sitting there very confident about his position in this particular game,
Mhm.
given that Andrew seems to be more or less just having all of the fun. Omnath triggers flying around, retrace available, let's make some mana, why not? All kinds of stuff going on for Andrew. I think more or less Matt just kind of fishing for some information here.
Yeah, I mean, from Matt's perspective, like, Andrew could flood on spells, so he can't retrace anything, but that's not really much to hope for either.
That doesn't seem like something that you should be wishing for.
No.
If I had to take a guess, let's see what Matt is trying to cast here. A solitude in order to take care of the Omnath. We'll see how Andrew wants to respond to that, if at all. Not particularly interested. I'll gain 4 life. Thank you.
Alright, small victories here for Matt Carlson. Does get the Omnath off the board. Andrew flush with cards, plus a solid graveyard there. Yeah, lightning bolt in hand. I mean, that's just
Yeah, I think we're
another.
at the yeah. Let's just lightning bolt everything for the rest of the game. You don't get to
Sure.
keep a creature. Let's do this. We'll pick up another fetch land. All right. Is it time to begin the expressive iteration chain? Let's find out. Maybe we're besieging some lands. We are. Are
Oh,
we going to try to
wow.
run Matt out of lands? The hard Armageddon plan?
I mean, that's a lot. I mean, that's a lightning bolt right there. So Andrew just lightning bolt to the land basically, as that Boseiju could be a bolt. Instead, it turns the
I
Triumph
think that's
into a
one of the new
forest.
triomes here.
Yeah. All right. So this game may take a few minutes, but it is definitely over. So let's go ahead and go back to Legacy and see how that plays out.
A little bit
And
shuffling up here. Some pretty quick games. I suspect this entire match could reasonably be over before that modern game one is
yeah.
finished. So we're going to see a lot of spells flying a lot faster here than previously. I imagine Nick choosing to elect to play as both players are looking at what appears to be their first 7-card hand. Is that a
Mhm.
counterbalance in Clay's hand? What's going on with that, Joe?
I have no idea. Let me consult the deck list here as who in their right mind plays counterbalance these days. It
Yeah,
is
that's
there is a single counterbalance in the 75. Wow, I don't know what to say about that. I was
probably
uh,
pretty good here.
at
If I had to guess on it. Oh,
after the Divining Top banning, there were people, including Nerd contributor Anurag Das, who tried to make counterbalance continue to exist, and I was just over it instantaneously. Like, this is just not going to work. What are you going to play? Seuss thing and try and draw a bunch of brainstorms? No, thank you.
just use your brainstorms. I mean, okay, talking about it seriously. If it counters one spell, is it worth its weight?
Yes.
Okay. I think there's a reasonable chance across the game that it would counter at least one spell in this matchup, and
I
maybe
mean,
in there's
it's
spots in
certainly
like the
possible.
Delvermere and stuff, it'll hit at least one spell. So
Yeah.
maybe the card's like a little more reasonable to give it credit for, even if it's not the oppressive lock it was during the
Yeah.
top miracles days.
No, and see, your problem is your top end is all wrong on mana curve. Like, Terminus could flip and get Fire Blast. Murktide, what are you doing for me? Nothing.
Yeah, Berkshire Regent probably not countering a whole lot of spells in the legacy format, if I had to
Yeah,
guess.
so yeah, this is just I don't
It's
know.
an
We'll see.
honorary
If it
2
gets
mana
two
spell.
spells, obviously it'll be probably a game winner. But
That reminds me, how's the checklist looking, Joe? How are we doing on that?
I'll tell you what, much as I hate to admit it, you called 6 new Capenna cards showing up.
Uh-huh.
There were 6.
I'm so talented. Wow, I'm incredible. Honestly, Nerd Rage Gaming has the best commentary crew. I tell you what, just incredible stuff. So here's a turn 1 Goblin Guide. No forcible for that one. Gonna reveal a Murktide. That's a good one, but no card advantage for Clay Spickelmeyer. Excuse me, as Clay Spickelmeyer is going to take his 2 damage on the nose. Draw. Looks like a Scalding Tarn passing of the turn. Electing not to play the Ponder or the Dragon's Rage Chandler. Looking to maybe get a little bit of information off this Scalding Tarn and then get a little Lightning Bolt action on
Mhm.
this Goblin Guide.
I want to see this counterbalance get played, and then Goblin Guide attack, reveal the top card every single turn, so Nick can play around it.
You don't like letting the reveal happen before the bolt there, Joe?
All right, so Yeah, 2 attackers here, so obviously we saw a bolt from Spicklemeyer, but damage is gonna continue coming through.
Yeah, these early creature draws, some of the better ones on the play for the burn deck. We see sometimes they cut some creatures and stuff on the draw. Definitely
Mhm.
not on the play. These are the most powerful starts you see from the burn deck. As here comes both creatures holding up that extra land. We saw a fetch pretty aggressively, and then no further plays. Does suggest potentially some combat tricks to give that monstrous Swift Spear a prowess trigger. Looks
Yeah.
like Clay is considering something with the Goblin Guide trigger on the stack.
Yeah, well, he's deciding creature. I mean, imagine if he bolts the Swift Spear and Nick has Bolt Fire Blast in hand to, preserve it. I mean, that's putting your setting yourself specs at 0 land on turn 2 is a cost, but that would be a pretty fantastic way to get this game really accelerated.
Seven, let's see, 7, 10, 12. That would put Clay to 5. Not quite dead on board, but pretty
No.
powerful. Mishra's Bobble, not the 0 CMC card you want on top when there's a Goblin Guide trigger, but can't be that bad. Here's a Lightning Bolt on the Goblin Guide. Monster Swiftspear looks like it's going to get through cleanly, and there is a Lightning Bolt before damage. That'll be 5 total damage, bringing Clay down to 12 as he
Yeah,
draws
so
a
that's already
Mishra's
that's
Bobble.
pretty good work for 2 turns here. Murktide at the ready, but the graveyard not cooperating just yet.
Looks like I'm sorry, Dragon's Rage Channeler with a Bobble follow up could do a little bit of work in order to make that happen. Going to keep that one on top. Clay likes that one, so probably we're going to see if he's going to cast the Ponder. Use another Surveil trigger here. All right, going to
And a
leave it on
basic
top
island
again.
again, which is nice for Clay. I don't know how you feel about Price of Progress after boarding against like Clay Spicklemeyer, an experienced player. Nick Carlson knows he's not going to get a bunch of free damage off of Price of Progress. You think that's something that gets boarded out?
Potentially. I could certainly see shaving some numbers if you're
Yeah.
sitting on 4 in the main deck. I don't think it's ever a card you want to draw 2 of. I can see shaving a couple copies, but depending on how many cards you have in the sideboard for this matchup, like I said, a lot of times I think burn players estimate that this matchup is at least slightly in their favor. And maybe not so much now with Murktide Regents, and maybe you need to bring in Pyroblast or something to handle Murktide Regent, because like I said, it really does swing the matchup a lot. We saw that happen really in game 1. We'll see maybe potentially happen again here in game 2, as we do see one in Clay Spicklemeyer's hand. So it depends on how Burn is approaching the matchup in 2022. A lot of my knowledge on the Burn approach to the Delver matchup, I think, is pretty outdated, but I
Mhm.
definitely think I would be interested in reaching for Price of Progresses before a lot of the other cards in the Burn deck when sideboarding.
So another thing about talking about outdated, there's a main deck Sulfuric Vortex in Nick Carlson's deck. That's not a card I feel like we've seen the last several years much of, at least in the starting 60.
Oh yeah, definitely not. Typically, yeah, like you said, that you want that like in a lot grindier spots. Things like that we see. Here the 3 mana spell, pretty hard to cast a lot of times in the burn deck. You're
Mhm.
shaving a lot on lands in order to make sure that you have that appropriate density of burn spells to finish your opponent off. But in some grindier matchups, we see some of the Jeskai control decks and the blue white base control decks in the legacy format. This card's really, really powerful. It shuts off all the swords to plowshares shenanigans, any other ways to gain life, while giving you a nice consistent stream of damage every single turn. A classic. It maybe speaks to the type of metagame Nick was expecting in this format. Maybe a little
Yeah.
bit higher density of fair decks than you would see in a more evenly distributed metagame.
Mhm. All right, so this Dragon Rage Channeler, which was a 3/3 on defense there as it was summoning sick, actually holds back the Swift for the turn, so that's nice for Clay, preserving the life total, just stopping the attacks, and then likely with the Murktide follow-up here. Now, it's not going to be the biggest Murktide ever, but 5/5 is still big enough to do stop
Yeah, still big enough
pretty
to
much
threaten the play.
anything.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And where you see Clay preserving the artifact type there in the yard, going to go ahead and tap the 3rd land. That way, Dragon's Age Channeler more likely to come back online a little bit faster. Artifact, one of the harder types to get into, excuse me, into the graveyard. With
Mhm.
Clay having an expressive iteration in order to really kind of facilitate that Surveil trigger churn in order to turn that back online next turn, as well as a Force of Will backup. Clay kind of in a pretty good spot, sitting at
Yeah.
a pretty healthy 11. It's always nice to be in double digits going into the burn player's turn 4. And Eidolon, once again, we might see a situation that we saw in game 1 where Murktide Regent offers so much damage that the burn player ends up kind of locked under their own Eidolon, as we see a
Mhm.
Searing Blaze. It looks like targeting the Murktide Regent. Eidolon trigger going to go ahead and bonk Nick for 2 there.
Yeah, this is, maybe there's a follow burn spell, or maybe this is just to set up an attack here for Nick Carlson.
Well, if there's a follow-up burn spell to finish the Murktide off, I mean, the 2 prowess triggers do a little bit to rebuy, some of the damage you're
Mhm.
losing by trying to kill this Murktide Regent. And
Yeah.
then the Eidolon is offering up a lot more power like with respect to burn damage, because once again, Clay is behind in the race,
Right.
and
I
the
mean,
Dragon Street Channeler now shrunk to a 1/1. Turning it back on is going to cost a lot of life, and that'll definitely swing the tide in Nick's favor, even if he's using multiple spells to take off this Murktide region.
right. And he's just going to put Clay to the test. He's just going to attack into this Murktide that has 3 damage on it here and ask, hey, do you want to trade this off for one of my creatures? Nice play here, really putting the pressure on Clay. And I don't know that there's a comfortable answer to this situation.
Oh yeah, I like this stack a lot. I feel like a lot of players, you can see the lightning bolt flicking around in Nick's hand. A lot of players would fire off this lightning bolt targeting this Murktide region, just kind of not thinking about it. Just like, all right, my plan is to finish this off. I already got a little bit of damage in with the Searing Blaze. Let's just go ahead and finish off the Murktide region and get my punch in for 5 or whatever. But now, Nick kind of in the spot where it's like, okay, like, I'm going to trade either of my creatures. I think they're not going to be worth more damage than these burn spells across future turns. If you want to trade it for this Eidolon, that's absolutely fine. And then here comes a crashing in Monastery Swiftspear. That Lightning Bolt still in hand for Nick. Very, very patient, and really shows that, like, okay, I understand and I respect that this lightning bolt may need to be a little bit more flexible. There's a chance that this Dragon's Rage Channeler is going to offer up, some damage, or you're going to find some sequence of other threats to where I need to start focusing on your threats again and then start beating you up with prowess triggers, but I don't know yet. And so waiting on this bolt, using that information, very, very heads up by Nick, and not a play I think a lot of burn players would make.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. So iteration here for Clay trying to rebuild, but having to be careful as at the moment he probably doesn't. Oh well, okay, that'll change things, but he doesn't necessarily want Delirium during his main phase here. Lightning Bolt, however, will make that tolerable as picking off the Swift Spirit and then an attack. Yeah, okay, there's a Swift Spirit going down. So now Dragon's Channeler back to being a 3/3 and ready to go. But we know there's a Bolt in Nick's hand and there's no 2 damage burn spells here, so any 2 spells for Nick will bring us to game 3.
Yeah, it looks like there's at least Lightning Bolt among the mix, maybe Rift Bolt and Eidolon of the Great Revel, the rest of the composition of his hand. And I like the waiting on the Lightning Bolt. Clay, I believe, down to 6 here. A second Lightning Bolt obviously finishes him off. Rift Bolt plus Lightning Bolt, going to get the job done. We do know Clay has a Force of Will in hand, but, once again, with the Murktide region gone, the clock may just not be fast enough. As here comes an Eidolon of the Great Revel. We're going to see how Clay responds to that. We do know Clay has a second copy of Lightning Bolt, that Expressive Iteration finding 2. Like I said, when you're in a racing situation, an Expressive Iteration being able to find 2 Lightning Bolts does a lot to swing a race in your favor.
Yeah, we'll see. The choice of wow, so suspend here for Nick holding up the Lightning Bolt. So Clay will have access to all his he really can cast 2 spells. If the Lightning Bolt had been fired off first, that would have limited Clay to just 1 more spell and might have actually brought out the Force of Will. As his attack comes across here, 6-6, both players crimped by this Eidolon. But
I believe
as
we're
we
going
know,
to see a
Murktide,
Murktide Regent follow up.
yeah,
Yeah, just make sure we
right.
get the job done, something big enough. There is a 6/6 that threatens to be lethal on its own. Clay with a Force of Will and a Lightning Bolt in hand, but there's a little bit of weirdness going on here where we have a Rift Bolt trigger. All right, I'm going to go to 4. That'll put you to 3. If I cast Lightning Bolt, which we know he has in hand, I didn't get a good look at the second card. Looks like a Searing Blood, which does also threaten to be lethal. Lightning Bolt, target you. That one can't happen.
Right.
As Nick goes down to 4.
So
And
Nick
Clay can
can
force this, but can he Lightning Bolt afterwards? Like
uh
Lightning Bolt Nick for lethal? Lightning Bolts you in response. Eidolon trigger on the stack. If we resolve Eidolon trigger, then Searing Blood.
yeah, and that's it. So
Okay.
the Eidolon will
What a
prevent
weird
Nick
game.
from
Eidolon kind of being
yeah,
the decider there between the 2 players.
yeah.
And
So that Eidolon costs Nick the ability to play the last spell in hand, and we'll give that the legacy match to the Ellenbogen McVitie Spiegelmeyer team. Well played there. I mean, that's tricky to navigate when it
that
gets
was
down
really
towards the
tricky.
end there.
Yeah, that was really cool and well navigated by Clay. I mean, we saw a lot of really heads up decision making. Like I said, I'm sure Clay has played this matchup plenty of times across the ages, and obviously, has played against it since. He, obviously clearly navigated his spells well, recognized the power of Murktide in this matchup, and utilized the spells in even some card disadvantageous ways in
Mhm.
order to aggressively get the Murktide regions out. And then those, even with Nick being able to answer them, proved to be too much, and we're able to finish off Nick in the legacy seat.
All right, so let's go back to modern. Ellen Logan did win the game with the Ren 6 Ultimate. No shock there. So we're in game two now. Matt Carlson trying to even things up. His Pioneer teammate, Nate Mulbach, did take the first game against Max McVitie. So the match still very much in play with Spickelmeyer having one legacy to put themselves certainly ahead.
All right. Well, we're going to see a little bit of a Ren and Six battle here.
Mhm.
Kind of more or less seems to be the way that the modern format is going. A lot of these four color, elemental style decks, blink style decks. A little bit of argument on exactly how to build these decks, but either way, the powerful cards have proven themselves to be powerful. Ren and Six certainly among them. As here's a Teferi Time Raveler follow up, Battle of the Planeswalkers, a good spot to be if you're in a fair mirror like this.
Mhm. Yeah, Ren. I mean, how good is Ren in six? I mean, this card is incredible for 2 mana. I feel like, I mean, we had our first 2 mana Planeswalker, Tybalt, and that was kind of a joke.
Correct.
Drake Sasser, Ren 6 is not a joke.
Not a joke, no sir. Banned in Legacy at this point in time. I've heard arguments for being banned in Modern, but certainly not banned at the moment. Seems to gain some stock with each new set. Picking up cards like Urza Saga seems to increase the stock a little bit of this card. Also, just enabling these 4-color mana bases because you can
Mhm.
pick up a fetch land every single turn, fetch some Triomes, fetch Shocklands, and make your 4-color mana bases work while maintaining that card advantage. There's a lot of people that say the 4-color decks flood a lot, whereas the actual reality is they just draw so many extra cards, but a lot of them are land through to Ren and Six that it feels like you're flooding, even though they're actually just cards that you're up. And Ren
Mhm.
and Six really, that's where you see that power. It's not necessarily obvious, I think, to every single player at first, but to those veterans of the game that know the power of fetch lands, know the power of wastelands, and have seen that happen in Legacy, Ren and Six, obviously a very, very, very powerful card. 2-mana Crucible of Worlds seems to be maybe a little bit too far in the power direction when looking at a Crucible effect.
Yes, indeed. Yeah, you speaking of the card gaining power as new lands are printed. Yeah, the channel land cycle from Kamigawa New and Neon Dynasty really made a difference as well. So here is Oath of Nissa to break the symmetry.
Now, keep in mind, Matt is on an Elementals build. We see
Mhm.
Risen Reef among the bunch. Now, we do know Andrew is eschewing that package in his build today. I'm not necessarily positive how they line up in the asymmetry, but I imagine Risen Reef seems like a card that draws a lot of cards. And so I think, offsetting a lot of the card disadvantage from the Evoke Elementals, as well as picking up things like Cavern of Souls for your creatures to be uncounterable, could matter a lot in these fair setups like we're seeing here. Now, both players, I mean, it really looks like a mirror match on the table right now with both players having Teferi and Ren and Six running. But these cards like Oath of Nissa and Risen Reef that Matt has access to pick up with Teferi Time Raveler could make a big difference here.
Yeah, we'll see. Okay, Risen Reef does not reveal land. Looks like an abundant growth, so sort of a land. And the Ren and Six race to ultimate will actually potentially broken here somewhat as Andrew is going to need to deal with his Risen Reef somehow. The easiest way is to run in six and pick it off. He is behind in the race, so that's probably not too big of a cost. If he was ahead in the run in six loyalty race, that might be a different story.
Yeah, you mentioned the Ren and Six Ultimate Race. I really think it kind of looks a little silly to run your 3-mana card into an onboard Ren and Six, but the card once again did replace itself. We saw an abundant growth picked up. No ramping actually being done there, but it, like you said, it keeps Matt ahead in the race to an ultimate, and we saw that's exactly how Andrew Ellenbogen won Game 1 in this matchup. Is that Ren and Six Ultimate being able to retrace spells, for the rest of the game. And Matt potentially threatening to do that here in this game. That's clearly what matters. The Risen Reef stuff might be a little too small ball based on how the game's developed. And that one loyalty that we see, actually two loyalty, because Andrew doesn't get to plus up this turn, is going to matter a lot here. As here's a fetch and shock. Secret Foundry.
Now, there are other ways to deal with the loyalty in these planeswalkers. I mean, obviously, it could be attacked, although I'm not sure it's going to be very easy to keep a creature in play here. But Fury can take a real chunk out of a planeswalker's loyalty.
Maybe a little
And here we're
Omnath.
gonna
Oh, so
see
Kenzen, the channel
sure.
lands you were
Yeah.
mentioning previously. We've really seen that card in combination with Red and Six. I think more than most, as far as a maybe alternate win condition for these four
Mhm,
color decks. Being able to just make 2 tokens every single turn really upgrades the plus ability of Ren and Six. And of course, they do have haste. They can threaten to swing the Planeswalker race here a little bit instantaneously, as they seem to attack Teferi Time Raveler, as that card can start to bounce the tokens and maybe alleviate some of the pressure there.
mhm. So, the ability to rebuy the tokens on next turn perhaps leads Andrew to not bother with the Ren 6 immediately, although a Fury drawn for Matt Carlson means he can actually pick off the Ren 6 here if he chooses.
Yeah, and we know it's going to be unchecked. Teferi Time Raveler in play for both
Mhm.
players does mean that there will be no on the stack shenanigans at all for either player.
Yeah.
This is going to be all sorcery speed. Just play your cards when on your main phases that we're going to see here. And like you said, Fury, a good option here. Being able to pick off Ren and Six does break the asymmetry as far as card advantage. That does matter a lot. Now, cards like Omnath that make a card and make a lot of mana can swing that in the other direction. My understanding is in these 4 color matchups, Omnath is among the most powerful cards that you can possibly play. As all your cards are 2-for-1s, you just need the mana to cast them all in order to get ahead.
Mhm.
As
Alright,
Ren and
so
6 is
Ren
going to be
6
picked off with Fury.
down and okay. I'm sorry, well, Ren 6 Andrew's Ren 6 is out of commission. Matt's takes down to kill off a token there.
Are we going to down tick to Fairy to pick off the other token?
No, looks
Looks
like it's
like no,
going
we're just going to
up.
plus that up and pass the turn
Yeah.
back. 1 token, not checked by the Fury, not a problem. Don't need to cash in the card quite yet. This is Andrew Ellenbogen's 5th mana source, so we could see a Fury of Andrew's here, but I think the red card in hand is a Lightning Bolt, so not quite good enough to tick off some Planeswalkers. Instead, going to go after the Fury.
All right, so now this token has a choice of planeswalkers to attack. Matt Carlson's life total being 14. I don't think there's any reality where Andrew actually attacks to the face, unless maybe he has an Omnath that he knows he can trigger level 3 to catch up on the planeswalkers. But no, yeah, one down
Not a
on
chance.
Teferi, and we'll continue on with just a cantrip.
Cycle the dress down real quick.
Hmm.
Pick up that dress down. Oh, look at all these tricks. I'm going to go ahead and draw all these cards. Cantrip, cantrip. Here's an abundant growth. Going to move a bunch of cards around, draw a bunch of cards, see if we can find some Furies. No Furies to be found here.
All right, so Matt untaps here, and this game could take a while. Pioneers getting going on game 3. Uh, my instinct would be to stay here, but chat's instinct seems to disagree. They want to see the Pioneer, so let's go ahead and jump over there. There's a good chance the modern match is still going by the time this
Yeah, well, I
finishes
think
up
we've not
anyway.
seen the last
We
of the 4 color mirror
yeah.
in the modern
We may
format.
not
Maybe the
miss
face of
much. It
retro.
may only we only miss a couple turns.
Move some cards around for a
Yeah.
while. We'll get back to you.
All right.
And
So
let's get to the
we here
Spikefield
we are.
Hazard on Elvish Mystic action.
Yeah. Okay. So the mono green deck we saw a little bit of yesterday. We also saw Winota. Both decks use elves just to ramp into more powerful things. So keeping the board clear, obviously, to Max's advantage. Oath of Nissa on the board here. I mean, that's still a devotion pip for what will eventually be, I'm sure, a Nykthos, but no real relevance now. And a pair of Sokenson sagas here. Barrel down Sokenson, is that the name of the card? No, that's an old card, isn't it?
I don't think that's the name of the card.
No, it's not. That's an old burn spell from the original uh Kamigawa. Anyway, the Sokenson Saga in play here. So the next creature that Max plays this turn will actually be significantly larger if he's got one. It'd be a shame to waste those counters, but if he
Yeah,
doesn't
there's
have a
no way you
creature, he
can
doesn't
waste these
have one.
counters, right?
So
But looks like we are. Wow. But I think one of the first one to flip next turn is going to get the counter from the other one, assuming you
yeah.
stack the triggers correctly. Um, and I mean, we see quite a contrast from what we're looking at in the modern seat, where we see 2 4 color decks. We have 2 monocolored decks here in kind of an asymmetrical battle. We talk about the Pioneer format. Fetch lands banned. A lot of the other powerful stuff that's going on in the format involves either delve spells or 1 mana creatures. So this matchup here, kind of very much about the one mana creatures. We've seen those managed very well. You alluded to Nykthos, also one of the big ways to make mana, as we see two of them among the Oath and Nissa 3-card stack here. What do you think of this matchup as a whole? So we've seen in this game so far, we do know that Nate is up a game. In this game we've seen so far, Max has been able to dispose of the early creatures and then put some pressure on the table. That seems like a winning formula against mono green, if I had to take a guess. Where do you think mono green really gets a lot of their points back?
Well, okay, so first, so Max isn't up a game. We're in game 3 here to start with.
Oh, I'm sorry. I read that wrong. My apologies.
But
We are in game three.
yeah, no, I think Max gets a lot of Max's advantage here comes from the fact that Nate's payoff spells cost, 4 or more mana. And if the mana ramping comes from creatures, Max is able to set that back. So I think we saw a game yesterday. There was like, a couple lands and like, a couple elves, and the elves die, and then the green player doesn't do anything. So you certainly slow them down, and then just I mean, it's a pure race. If this game goes to turn 7, I think green's probably just miles ahead.
So
But
in this game here, we see the rampings kind of coming from a Wolf Willow Haven and a
right.
Kiora. So maybe that's the kind of draw that the green deck is actually looking for in the red matchup. If you want to try to burn down this Kiora, that's 7 loyalty. That's a lot of spells.
Yeah.
And then, of course, the Wolf Willow Haven, you can't even target with your spells, as here comes the first of many flip sagas. Kumano faces Kakazan.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're going to
Kumano
go with
faces
Kumano
Kakuzen.
Saga is what we're going to call this from this on. I'm not going to try to say that every single time. And I believe the backside of this card, in addition to making creatures that are dealt damage by you be exiled when they die, it also has haste. So very relevant when it gets exiled, comes back. This card being able to attack the turn it comes back, have 4 damage that Max has access to this turn.
How is it that red has legendary personalities, Sokenzan and Kakazan? I mean, that's just two. Maybe they're brothers or something, or cousins. I don't know. But like,
There's a lot of various different legends that were available
yeah,
in the original Kamigawa, and I believe many of the sagas are attempts to call back to those. So,
yeah.
unless you're well versed in your Kamigawa mono red legends, I think you may not be up to date on the lore. As here is a Bone Crusher Giant. Remember, you have to cast the creatures in order to get that counter. So the Bone Crusher Giant the first creature cast for Max will enter as a 5/4.
All right. So 3 devotion in play at the moment. That's not actually enough to net anything from Nykthos. I believe it just plays even at this point. So if Nate
But
can get
even
something
having a
else on
one
the
mana
board,
card here does threaten with Kiora to make quite a
mhm.
bit of mana off Nykthos. So we are kind of at that threshold where every single pip matters. As here comes quite a few pips in form of Old Growth Troll.
Yeah, exactly. So a card that's off Kiora, and now Kiora can untap the Wolf Hollow land, and this
And
now
activate
Nykthos
Nykthos. Wow,
making
that's a lot of
6.
mana.
Yep.
And Cavalier of Thorns, that's a lot of toughness. And I think these are probably 2 of your better cards in the matchup. We're going to go ahead and draw a card of Kiora as well. Kiora's ability giving a little bit of card advantage here as we reveal the top 5, looking for a land to put onto the battlefield. Looks like forest among many other forests and a couple elves and stuff. Going to hit, going to provide Nate with a little bit of ramp, but most importantly, a 4/4 body and a 5/6 body. Now, Uncle Troll, when it dies, does offer the ability to enchant a land, which makes more mana, and then you can turn that into another creature. These flipped Kumano enchantments do exile Uncle Troll if it does get burnt out, so not
Mhm.
quite as much of a blowout if that card does go to the graveyard, but still a very impressive defense in one turn from the mono green deck.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's putting it lightly. Yeah, the Cavalier of Thorns also has a death ability, which would be shut down, but, yeah. Max has got quite a bit of work to do here as now the board is gummed up. He's just gonna go all in, get as much damage
This
across
is
as he
this is
can.
called math is for blockers, Joe.
Yeah, exactly.
This is called the math is for blockers special.
Well, this is
As
gonna be a
we just fire up that
massacre.
den and crunch.
Yeah, Max is gonna lose most of his board here. However, he will get through a decent amount of damage, and then it's just up to burn spells plus utility lands to finish things up.
Here
So
we go.
is
It looks
this
like we're gonna old growth on the den. Cavalier gonna take care of the Bone Crusher Giant. Does send 7 points through. Does put Nate in a pretty precarious position if he elects not to block with this Elvish Mystic.
yeah,
But
it's a
7
lot.
points is a lot. And with a
Yeah.
Ramunap Runes in play, there's a potential to be burned out from even a modestly high life total.
Yeah, this elf not blocking here would be a real sign of confidence in my eyes from Nate Molbach, but we'll see. He's debating. He's getting some other thoughts from his teammates here.
Let's see. Let's take a look at the hand. Maybe is that a Pelucranos among other cards? That'd provide a nice additional defense in the following turn, and provided you can keep all your pips around, can also threaten to just actually wrath the rest of the board, leaving Max only really able to finish the game with burn spells. And Pelucranos being monstrous, all that stuff would be a lot of extra damage. Either way, there's still a lot of power in play for Nate. I'm assuming he gets to keep all of his creatures. Cavalier 5 power, Ogotro 4 power, 10 power on board, 2-turn clock. So this game really looking to be over fairly quickly from this
Yeah,
point.
2-turn
Nate has a
clock
potential
though.
for a
Yeah,
big
I
turn
mean,
here.
maybe a 2-turn clock, but Nate's not going to get 2 attacks. Like he can't swing out and do half damage and then survive. So there's got to be
We got a lot of
some.
mana we have access to. Kiora threatening to double up on those Nykthos activations.
Yeah,
Nykthos making 1, 2, plus 3, 5, plus 3 more, 8, plus 1 more, 9? Looks like the answer was 10. Oh, Miss Wolf Haven. 10. 10 mana. Let's go ahead and untap that Nykthos. Let's run that one back. How do you like 18 mana, Joe? Is that enough mana?
I
Or what are we
mean,
doing here?
we'll see. I mean, it needs to be enough. Max is at 20, so
All right,
let's
let's see.
let's
Let's see what Nate can produce. I see Karn
yeah.
among the mix. Don't know if there's any cards that gain life or do a lot to answer the battlefield this turn in Nate's sideboard options. As here comes a Karn the Great Creator.
Okay. Well, that
All
opens
right,
up
very quickly
for
downtick that one.
a fairly
Let's see what we
serious
have in
wish
mind.
board here. Finding Shadow
Shadow
Spear.
Spear. How about
Okay.
that one? That
Okay.
one gains life.
It does. That's and we have a lot more mana to use here. I mean,
That
that's
we do. We
cheap.
still have access to 14 mana. I think we have enough to play and activate that one. As here comes Shadow Spear. Probably going to put that one on the biggest creature possible. Do want to gain your large amounts of life. And then, of course, can move it afterwards to block with lifelink as well.
Mm-hmm. Okay, another 5 or so mana
4 mana
for
for Pelucranos.
Pelucranos. Yeah,
Now, Joe, I have a question. If we move the Shadow Spear to Pelucranos and then fight a lot of things, does that do the damage? Does that gain the life?
I believe it would. Let me check
Interesting.
on Pelucranos real quick, but I believe it does fight the creatures. Maybe it just shoots them, but let's see. Here we go. Pelucranos.
Here we go. Becomes monstrous. Deals X damage divided. It deals X damage divided as you choose many target creatures. Each of those creatures deals damage equal to its power. So it only does the damage you put into X. Probably not worth the damage right now. Can always do that if there's another turn, but not really looking like Max is going to do more than take a draw. Max doesn't even want to
Max
play
is
the rest of it. We're good. I'm good. All right. You gained 1,000,000 life. I get it. I get the joke. Good game. We're done here.
yeah, yeah. All right. So let's go back to modern then. We are either in or heading to game 3. All right. So all those planeswalkers led to Matt Carlson winning game 2. And this is going to be the decider. Matt Carlson versus Andrew Ellenbogen, game 3 of modern. Yesterday we saw a game 3 in Pioneer in round 7 that if you don't know the result of, you should go watch. It was really pretty exciting stuff as far as squeezing into the top 8. And now we'll see who's going to the finals based
What
on
an
the
important
outcome of
top
this
8 for this
modern game
team, too.
3.
We did speak to them yesterday, and Andrew, of course, looking to qualify for the end of the year NRG Championship. And what a way to do it at the very end of the season. The biggest NRG to date, a lot on the line for these players, in addition to the cash and, of course, a trophy. We have, 2 qualifications for the NRG Championship up for grabs as Ellenbogen does take care of the Teferi and swing in with an Ice Fang Quaddle.
Yeah, Ice and Quaddle. 1 damage not going to amount to much, but yeah, certainly getting Teferi off the board. Nice. And now Matt Carlson. Looks like there's an Omnath, an Eldarmy's Call, and Abundant Growth. What is the follow-up?
Looks like maybe just a little modest abundant growth. Going to go ahead and cycle. Now, Ellenbogen has a Besiju who endures in play. Does that potentially suggest that Ellenbogen not necessarily flushed with lands in hand? I think that's one of those you want to hold as long as possible.
I agree with you there, and I'm not sure that Matt Carlson has lands either.
Yeah, as
There's
here
a
comes a Fury pitching what looks to be Obsidian Charmaw with a little bit of Ephemerate action.
okay,
Going to take care of the Ice Fang Quaddle and
yeah,
going to get to keep the Fury around for your trouble. Maybe with both players missing land drops, Matt kind of deciding to be on the aggressive here. And with the Ephemerate being in exile, I think anything that Elbogan plays is more or less guaranteed to take 4 damage on the next turn, unless Elbogan chooses to interact in some way. But you do need to plan for that, no matter what your plan actually is. Misty Rainforest looks to be a good draw here, given that Matt was, I think, banking on both players missing on land drops for a while in order to actually enable the aggressive plan with Fury to work.
mhm.
Choosing not to flicker, that way you can get the attack in, seems like it makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we'll see if this works against the hammer decks in the previous iteration of Modern. Fury was a sizable threat here against the four color decks where there is more removal. I mean, Lightning Bolt is obviously the most embarrassing way to just have it picked off for 1 mana, but not one is not present. And 6 damage comes across. Andrew back to 11, down to 11, and Matt Carlson without a land still.
And here's an endurance, maybe on end step. Go ahead and shuffle that Eldamari's call back in. An interesting one, assuming the damage has already happened. It is a pretty good blocker for Fury. It looks like
Yeah,
maybe Ellenbogen actually looking to try to race in some capacity.
perhaps I think there's another endurance in hand, so maybe it's just I'll get one on the board to attack with, and then the second one can handle the Fury.
I could see that.
Yeah,
Pretty heads up there. I feel like a lot of players would flash that one in, try to block, and just kind of keep the board clear and keep treading water. Maybe Ellenbogen kind of pivoting on roll here, saying, "Okay, you're willing to go down quite a few cards. There was 3 cards involved in just killing an Ice Fang Quaddle in order to try to get aggressive. Well, I'm going to try to swing back. I'm going to try to participate in that way because I got creatures too."
yeah. I believe there is
There's land number
Quaddle.
5.
Okay, so no swing in. There's Quaddle and Elderman's Call in Matt's hand here. I'm a little surprised we didn't see Quaddle main phase to try and hit the land drop, but no, okay, it's an endurance back for Matt's side. All right, that makes sense.
Endurance being a 3/4 are going to do a lot to clog up this board, but I think that's actually pretty bad for Matt. If Andrew's the one making land drops, then clogging up the board and slowing things down seems to be basically exactly what Matt doesn't want to happen. Matt wants Andrew to die as fast as possible, but Ephemerate, a pretty good draw if your plan is to kill this endurance. Going to go ahead and get in with both attackers. Going to see how Andrew acts, if at all.
Well,
If Andrew flashes in this endurance and blocks, there's some really neat tricks available with
yeah,
Ephemerate with
this
after
could
first
go.
strike damage.
Yeah, this could go very poorly for Mr. Ellenbogen here.
Now we do know Ellenbogen does have access to a counterspell in hand, but either way, I think Matt's going to be pretty enticed to cast this Ephemerate. Looks like we are going to. Looks
Yeah,
like I assume this is after first strike damage.
right.
Ellenbogen says absolutely not. Very quickly going to fetch, go grab a land, and try to get a counterspell going on that card. I believe
Yeah. So
can't let that one happen.
if this ephemerate would resolve, Fury would blink, come back in, and then shoot and be able to help pick off both endurance. So yeah, Andrew not going to tolerate that counter spell on ephemerate. So instead, if Matt has nothing else, then Fury and endurance will trade. Their two endurances will bounce off of each other. Andrew down to 9, but won't take any further damage this turn.
Correct. And not a great trade for Matt overall. But if there is something like an expressive iteration follow up, and it looks like we're still before damage going to El Odomri's call, what are we grabbing here? A Solitude?
I think it almost has to be, which is going
Looks
to
like
put
Solitude.
Matt way down on resources. But trying to just finish the game off here, I guess the play probably has to be to preserve the Fury.
Yeah, I mean, if your plan is, I mean, we committed so many cards in order to
Yeah,
make this Fury happen to begin with. We pitched Obsidian Charmal, we ephemerated it just to take care of a single Ice Fang Quaddle. If you're all in on the aggressive plan, I mean, this does make sense, but I mean, you're hemorrhaging cards, and this
right.
endurance gets to even stay around. So, I mean, a tough spot for Matt for sure, as we know Ellenbogen's going to be able to untap, have Expressive Iteration, Prismatic Ending, a fantastic draw in order to take care of the other endurance and stifle some of the aggression from Matt's side.
Yeah, and this is going to leave Matt without even an obvious attack here as Andrew sets up a
Yeah.
capable walker in endurance. And yeah, Matt is now pitch cast a couple times and at least finds a playable card in Risen Reef.
Risen Reef, yeah, very castable. Could find a land, maybe start to catch up on some of the card advantage and land resources. And as a result, Ellenbogen respects that. Counterspell that one. No, thank you. All right. Are you attacking this Fury into my endurance? What you got? Absolutely not. Weren't interested in trading before. Why would you be interested now? Solitude, fantastic draw for Andrew as far as stifling aggression goes. And Matt, I think more or less a victim of, kind of not drawing the lands he needed to cast his powerful spells for their card advantage rates, right? Like he
Yeah.
stuck pitch casting everything and no expressive iterations for Matt. Multiple copies, it looks like, for Andrew at this point. Going to go ahead and exile Teferi. Looks like put expressive iteration, I guess, in hand. And, Andrew, of course, the wealth of resources, more or less bought out by drawing lands off the top when they were both kind of stuck, as Fury going to go back to hand and Endurance going to come across the red zone. Andrew on the attack now.
Yeah, iteration. I think Andrew was hoping for a land there to make the fifth land post iteration, so actually the seventh land, and then be able to hard cast that Solitude in hand. Instead finds Teferi and bounces the Fury, so that clears the board either way. And as we know, Matt's not in the business of actually casting creatures for their mana cost, so that Fury might be stuck in hand for a while. Endurance gets picked off, but the tides are definitely leaning in favor of Andrew Bellomogan and his teammates McVitie and Spickelmeyer.
Yeah, Andrew ahead on all metrics except life total. Has, lands, a planeswalker, more cards in hand with more to come. Like I said, I think we saw an expressive iteration put in hand as well. Both players do still have access to their companions, but of course only one of them can actually cast it. So Andrew very firmly ahead. We'll see if he can keep his advantage and close the game off and win the decider here for his team in the semifinals.
Okay.
Very quickly going to snap off this expressive iteration. Always a good place to start your turn. Ren and 6 and Omnath among the bunch. Hard not to be interested in at least one of those. Fetch land already in hand. I'll take that Omnath, thank you. That's a lot of mana. I'll take
Yes,
the
it
Ren too,
is.
why not?
So land probably going to the bottom. Don't need that anymore. Here's Omnath. Here is the business. All protected by Teferi Time Raveler. Matt Carlson can just sit back and watch.
And
Andrew.
what a brutal game for Matt. Once again,
Mhm.
committed a lot of resources to an aggressive game plan, saying, all right, look, we're both stuck on lands. I have the ability to get very aggressive, be the first one to get a very respectable threat into play and close the game in 3 turns, but hopefully before you draw out. Andrew, of course, drew some lands, was able to cast all of his powerful spells, and is now firmly in the driver's seat. Going to go ahead and buy Yorion with all that extra mana. Cast Ice Fang Quaddle, pass the turn back, and a land off the top from Matt. We'll see if
Just
it's
what
too
he's
little.
asking for.
Joe, I think that's one of those on time moments. One
I
of
mean,
those.
sure.
You could have been a few cards earlier. That
Yeah,
wouldn't
I
have hurt a
mean, granted,
lot.
it's probably about turn 8 right now, but I mean, Matt can start chaining Omnaths or something. I mean, trying to figure out what to do here.
Looks like Fury among the options. Could Fury pitch cast the Omnath? But once again, that's just hemorrhaging more cards. Ice Fang Quaddle does stymie the aggression potentially from Andrew Ellenbogen, but I don't think the game's really overly about getting aggressive at this stage.
Mm-hmm.
And once again, we've kind of pivoted to it being more about card advantage and resources, of which Andrew has a embarrassment, I would say.
Yes, indeed. Matt Carlson going to commit planes to the board and does have a choice of follow-ups here. It looks like it's going to be Quaddle,
Quaddle,
which does not
going to draw a
currently have
card.
Death Touch.
Abundant Growth, going to enable that plains to be a little bit better of a land. Tap for some additional colors. Abundant Growth going to enter, draw a card. Another land picked off. But once again, all these land drops may look to be too little too late as Andrew untaps all of his mana. Omnath still in play. Planeswalker still in play. And we'll see if Andrew can turn the corner this game and keep Matt from clawing his way back in now that he's hitting land drops.
All right, let's see. Omnath swings across. Yeah, that was Andrew checking to see
Snow
whether Matt
permanent count. Does that have
had.
death touch?
Yeah,
No? Okay.
yeah. So that's out of here. Andrew gained some life. That's not too relevant right now. Padding it is nice, but the mana boost is what's significant. With Eldermare's Call, Andrew can do whatever he wants right here. I mean, this is the point where, I mean, if you have like Emrakul, in your sideboard, which I don't think we do, but would be Andrew can cast anything he wants here. Here is
I mean, they
Elemental
often
Storm.
do have
Yeah, I
Emrakul in
know
their
they sometimes
sideboard.
have it. We'll
It is
see.
possible there's an Emrakul Promise End. It looks like
Yeah.
Eternal Witness, the better target.
Yeah, let's go ahead and check. Wonder if
There's
Elmogan
a good
actually.
chance, and I do think you should bring it in here, right? Like if there's a
Yeah.
spot for it, the matchup where you're
He
just
does
flanking a
have
bunch of
one.
land drops. Yeah, there's probably
Yeah,
one in
he
the
does
deck.
have one.
We're going to pick up Counterspell, though. This is probably a little bit better for a little more conservative, at least for sealing the game off. Going to go ahead and get Eternal Witness, which represents another body in play to get aggressive, as well as a Counterspell. As here comes Ren and 6. Of course, this powerful Planeswalker can pick up channel lands, fetch lands, keep the mana flood going, can keep the channel lands as spells, and really just offer to draw kind of whatever card you want. You want a
Mhm.
land? We got that. You want a spell? Oh, we can do that too. Ren does it all in this deck.
It does indeed. And 7 power on the board right now for Andrew, looking to get this game over with fairly soon. Maybe not next turn. All out attack plus an Omnath level 3 trigger would do it, but I don't know that that is likely. But Matt Carlson's like, yeah, I cannot fight against this. I needed 2 more land 5 turns ago, and it just wasn't there. So McVitie, Ellenbogen, and Swickelmeyer will advance to the finals. All
Impressive,
right. So,
impressive run for this team, but we've seen be a dominant force on the NRG series all season long.
yeah.
And Max McVitie, Andrew Ellenbogen, both high-ranking players on our leaderboard. We can take a look at that here in a moment, but this is a big weekend for them either way. We do know that a pile of points coming their way, and this is before the modern event that we're going to be watching later on today, which more points are available there. 2 spots at the NRG championship up for grabs. A lot on the line this weekend.
Yeah. So we'll go ahead and bring up the leaderboard now. So the top 2 unqualified players at the end of the day, meaning after the points are awarded for this team event and for the modern 5K, then the top 2 players who aren't already qualified will lock up slots in the end of the year championship. You can see Piper Powell and Ivan Espinosa already in there. Joseph Bernal had sizable cushion over the rest of the field for the first of those 2 spots, and Andrew Ellenbogen there in 6th place with 49 points, looking pretty strong right now. Let's go ahead and and you can see Max McVitie there in 12th with 37. Let's go ahead and bring up the prize for this team event so you can see the points that are awarded. Up top there, 30 points for the win. So already locking up 25 and already putting himself perhaps in position to qualify is Andrew Ellenbogen. So the
Yeah, so
finals are up next. Stick around. We'll be right back. We'll get that going and we'll see who takes down the first NRG event in Minnesota in a moment. right, good morning. We're back. Finals is upcoming. Drake Sasser's here. This is Nerd Rage Gaming. Let me tell you where we're at. So we watched McVitie, Ellenbogen, and Spickelmeyer win their semifinal. On the other side of the bracket, we had Jesse Robkin, Zoe Riederman, and Zach Allen prevail. So we have star-studded finals for you here. I'm going to go through the matchups. In Legacy, we're going to have Blue Red Delver versus Just Guy Days Undoing Control. That one might
Gotta
take a
love
while.
Zach Allen.
So we're not going to start
Yeah.
with that. In Modern, we're going to have Four Color Value Pile versus Living End. That one, we've actually
take a
seen
while.
Zoe Riederman close some games fairly quickly.
Yeah.
So,
Could. Maybe. Depends on who's winning, I think.
yeah, depends on how that goes. But we're going to start with Pioneer. We're going to have Max McVitie's red, prowess aggro burn deck versus Jesse Robkin playing blue red prowess, probably featuring Ledger Shredder.
I think we've definitely seen that card in the past. We've seen that in this tournament.
Mm-hmm.
She's definitely got a really sweet take on Is It Prowess. We saw her dispatch of a Grease Fang deck early on in the hands of Robert Taylor using Unlicensed First and Ledger Shredder. And now we are here in the finals with her spicy take on Is It Prowess up against a mono red strategy. Very different flavor. Now that 3 toughness on Ledger Shredder I think is going to look really good. But this is the time. If there's a time for it to perform here in the finals, at the largest NRG available to stack teams, now's the time for that Is It deck to come through for sure. So some awesome Magic we're going to get to watch here as soon as these players are ready to go. And I mean, there's nothing better than Sunday Magic. 3 different formats, 2 stacked teams, trophy on the line. Doesn't get better than this, Joe.
No, it's absolutely fantastic. Everyone's here. Thanks for viewing our channel, our events this weekend. We know there are other options out there. Thank you for choosing us. If you're enjoying the content, hit the follow button so Norman Cohen will get off my back about asking for new followers. But
make sure you like, subscribe.
Yeah, exactly. All that stuff. Players are
you need a bit, Joe. You need to get like a script.
Get the pregame stuff out of the way. Let's bring up the prize pool one more time because we only have 2 teams left now. So we're up top there. $3,000 for the winning team, $1,500 for second, and a whole bunch of NRG Series points. Those points are useful for qualifying for the end of the year championship. We've got one player in this finals who has done probably enough work to book a ticket. Andrew Ellenbogen probably going to be joining Ivan Espinoza and Piper Powell in the championship at the end of the year. Max McVitie also picked up a lot of points this weekend, had a long ways to go to make it through, but actually is I think 30 points for winning would put him. I know Antonio Zanuto didn't. I believe Antonio Zanuto did not play this weekend. I believe he's judging this weekend. We haven't seen. I know Will Kruger played in the set championship. So some of these players not earning any points this weekend. Max McVitie may actually be able to jump from 12th up to the one of the 2 unqualified spots. We'll see. Obviously, the team event counts, but also the modern 5K counts, which is actually kicking off right now. But
when you mentioned
Max
being able to jump, Zoe Riederman also there
at
I believe 14th place.
Okay.
She with the same point total as Max. So there's a lot on the line here for both of these players. Either team getting that 5-point boost could make the difference when it comes to looking at large bids, even at the end of the year for the NRG championships. Both these teams, a lot on the line, more than just the money. You can see the trophy there on the screen. We're going to move that out the way a little bit, but they are playing for trophies here. They're playing for a pile of cash, and also they're playing for a pile of points. Each, individual player might value one thing over the other, but I know both teams hungry for all of it. Winner takes all. Let's see what we got.
All right, opening hands being drawn on top of the fancy new version of the NRG Championship Series playmats. Pretty slick, right?
I do like them. I like the marbling. I'm a big marbling fan that looks like kind of like stone like. I appreciate that.
All right, Kumano faces Kakazan. The start for Max McVitie, and we are underway. Yeah, they showed me like 10 different layouts for these playmats, and I was like, I don't like 2 of them. The other 8, I'm indifferent. This is the one they picked.
Fair enough. Joe, the opinion man. It's got a lot. Right. I hate this one. The rest are I can take or leave. Looks like Jesse, pretty quick draw. Considering turn 1 play. Oh, no, just a passing of the turn. Did have a Monastery Swiss be available for her to play. Elected not to. I think that speaks a lot to what's going on. And Jesse kindly reminding Max, please stick your thing up before you play your land. It is, we're in your main phase. As here comes the Shokenzen Channel land from Kamigawa. Going to play Soulscar Mage as a 2/3 opt. Going to happen likely on the end step. We do like that one. Going to leave it on top, draw a card as we go to her turn 2.
All right, so you see a double-faced card flip around, Spikefield Hazard into play, and no creature on the board yet for Jesse Rockin, so perhaps opting there, hoping to find a actually functional land for turn 2 to get the Legislator on the board. Instead, it will have to wait a turn, and Max will have the early advantage here with an attack for 4.
Play with
Well,
fire, potentially looking to cut that down a little
yep.
bit. Starting at 2, going to see if Max wants to build it up with any prowess triggers. Now, I really like how Jesse sequenced this game so far. We noticed that instead of playing her Swiss Spear on 1, like a lot of players would do, she elected to opt instead. And it's like, weird. Okay, why would she do that? Well, think about the power Swiss Spear offers to the table. When all of the removal in this format is shocks, leaving your Swiss Spear naked to die to a random shock effect, not great. Instead, you can do a sequence where you just hold up one of your many 1-mana spells. We see her firing off multiple of them here, an opt in order to get a connive out of this Ledger Shredder. And actually going to discard the Monastery Swiss Spear. Going to put a counter here. But either way, not running it directly into a shock, incredibly heads up from Jesse. Not a
I
play a
don't
lot of
think
players would
the
make.
opt resolved there. I think the opt was I think we connived off the Ledger Shredder and then just put the opt in the graveyard. I may be wrong, but
I don't know. I can't necessarily
I
track the
want
cards.
director to radio over to the table there and just check on that. I don't think that opt actually did anything.
Yeah, it's. I mean, obviously the Ledger Shredder connive, probably among the more important of the two actions there, but definitely need to resolve the opt if it was cast. I can't tell
Right.
for sure, but if that opt's cast, then we should definitely stop the match and get that handled if possible.
This is
As
a
looks like
Torbron coming down for Max, which if we can
next.
pop that up is 2 extra damage for red sources, I believe, for Max McVitie. And yeah, we need to have this taken care of. I mean, at some point they'll go too far to straighten this out. Okay, and I think this is going to be handled now. Maybe we missaw that, but I
Looks like
certainly
we're
didn't see it.
selecting cards here, showing off
Yeah,
what maybe was grabbed off opt. Looks like that was maybe the opt card, and then the other one was maybe it might have just been done so quickly that we didn't see it.
maybe.
But
Chat,
it should be easy to track, right? You can count the
yeah,
cards. The judges will
yeah,
handle this. This is not within our range to be able to do,
yeah.
but we have fantastic judges here that'll be able to handle the situation and do what is appropriate, get everything rewinded if need be.
All right, so let's straighten this out now. But yeah, chat seems to agree that the opt didn't actually resolve. Now you can forget a trigger. It is possible to play your second spell and just space on the connive, and that's fine. However, when a spell's cast, it does have to resolve, and actually the scry on the opt could also be potentially missed and just assumed that you topped the card. However, Jesse would not be allowed to not draw for the opt since it was actually put on the stack.
Right.
So
Well,
while that's sorted out, maybe we can peek in on one of the other matches. Maybe we'll look at Modern or Legacy for just a moment. This probably won't take too long to sort out.
agreed. Just a quick counting of the cards. You can figure out exactly,
Mhm.
has, there've been cards drawn every turn, what have you, as we port over here to a all volcanic island match. Probably not where the Azorius control deck wants to be, as it is an Azorius control deck, and we see a mountain in hand. Tundra, here it comes. Looks like prismatic ending on Dragon's Rage Channeler. Yeah, very typical kind of board state, I think, for these two decks. The Delver deck generally looking to deploy about a threat at a time, make the control deck answer those before overcommitting. That way you're not committing into sweepers and things like Supreme
Mhm.
Verdict and previously Terminus, now a little bit more along the Verdict side. And Delver is going to be flipped off of Daze, a pretty good one, when there's only 2 non-basic lands for Zach Allen in play.
All right, and there is I don't know if I've ever been used to
Tapped
Steam
Steam
Vents
Vents. Tapped
making
Steam
its
Vents,
way
Joe.
back into Legacy.
Is this a budget option? What's going on here?
I mean, compared to the Dark Border duels on the other side of the table, I mean, yeah, this is looking kind of
It's a
grimy
Dark
over
Border
at
tool.
play Spicklemeyer's side of the board.
Yeah, of course, the Delver deck has been, as of late, going up to 4 volcanic islands and a steam vents to function as your 5th volcanic island.
Mhm.
Having access to blue and red on the first turn so paramount that it is worth actually playing a shock land and having to shock it some amount of the time in order to have access to a 5th copy, especially in spots like the Mirror where there's a lot of wastelands flying around and you could actually run out of volcanic islands.
Mhm.
So we do see a copy of steam vents among the other lands in the Is It Delver decks these days. It is not a budget option, and we see a brainstorm here from Zach. A basic mountain play. It looks like Mystic Sanctuary in Zach's hand. This basic mountain not doing a whole lot to enable that card as a real magic card. Swords to Plowshares happening here on the upkeep in order to make Clay tap any lands necessary on his turn.
All right, we're gonna go jump over back to Pioneer as that's the match we're gonna focus on, at least to get things started, as this has been sorted out. And we continue on. We see the Torbron, which is in play for the moment.
A Reckless Rage. That one dealing 4 damage does a great job dispatching of the 2/4 Torbrand, a card that normally would appear pretty problematic for decks like Is It to take care of, but the Prowess deck having access to a 1 mana card that does 4 damage, really proving to be incredibly effective here at taking Torbrand off the table, basically taking away Max's entire previous turn and moving Ledger Shredders along with these Connive triggers. And here's another one to take out Soulscar Mage.
Yeah.
Wow.
Reckless Rage is just, I mean, sure, there's a drawback, but like, is it really a drawback in this deck when all your creatures
Absolutely
absorb
not. It does
2 damage?
basically nothing, Joe, as all the
One mana,
creatures survive the 2 damage.
yeah, 1 mana, 4 damage to a creature. I mean, I feel like that would be playable in Modern easily
Absolutely.
if you consistently had creatures to target. And yeah, this is just very nice here. And the 2 Ledger Shredders, growing here. And yeah, Max is ahead on life, which he generally is going to be at the beginning of a game, but not by a solid amount. And yeah, this is looking a little precarious here for him in game one. Chandra Dress to Kill comes into play here, but
Looks like opting
that,
to go ahead and plus get a damage out of it, not looking for a
yeah,
card necessarily.
I mean, these Ledger Shredders can just run that down with no problem if Jesse decides it's worth an attack, which it probably is. And yep, there it goes.
There
So
it goes.
Chandra, okay, 3 mana for a card, 1 damage, and absorb 5. That's okay.
It's a 7 mana fog, as here
Yeah.
comes Play with Fire. I mean, it could matter a lot. It did do damage to Jessie. This Play with Fire does put her to an even 8 with things like Ramanap Ruins and other 2 damage burn spells that does actually remove a little bit of the clock. And like we said, it does kind of represent a little bit of a fog effect with all the damage having to go that direction. Max staying at a healthy 17 as he tries to assemble some sequence of cards that will kill Jesse. Now, these large Ledger Shredders in the air threaten to be able to attack and block. So the ground not really looking like a fantastic option. Very quickly going to consider on her turn.
Yeah, so consider into whatever the follow-up is here, and then those Ledger Shredders are going to connive again. And
Yeah,
here
that's
we
I
are
think I
with,
think another connive or two is really going to be brutal. And Sprite
yeah,
Dragon adding to the threat count, going to do a lot. We see Giganta has already been bought by Jesse as well. That one's going to go straight to the graveyard, though. Not necessarily interested in casting it, but it looks good as a 1/1 counter on a Ledger Shredder.
all right. And a land steam vents will get pitched there, so no growth that time, but 6 power on the board. Sprite Dragon, perhaps
Going to
looking to
get
grow.
grown with a
Hell, a Treasure
Treasure
Cruise.
Cruise. That's the one you want to see.
Yeah. So this really, I mean, Max V needs to get this over real quick, and I don't know that that's actually possible. I'm sure it's possible, but it's not likely as Jesse is really loading up here with, I don't know. I wonder now there are some haste creatures in Max's deck here. Does Jesse hold a creature back here, do you think?
I let's see, what do we got? We got 6 in the air, 7, 8. I don't
Yeah.
think so. You're representing lethal in 2 attacks. I think she's doing that math exactly right now.
Yeah.
I don't believe unless you have a play with fire, you can afford it. Actually, I think you can, especially with the Swiss Spear. You can actually just hold the Swiss Spear back if you want. Just to respect that. You have to consider to grow it too to get it around a removal spell. The Swiss Spear doesn't do a lot to change the clock. So I think you're looking to attack with the flyers here most likely and hold just about everything else back. Or yeah, and hold back the Swiss Spear, which is exactly what she's going to do. A very good attack from Jesse. Heads up respecting that haste creature. As Max probably looking to just ram an Ruins. You're at 6. Okay. I'm at 9. I have a Swiss Spear in hand and a mountain. That's not good enough. Max going to pick it up in a convincing game 1 victory for Jesse Robkin. What a case study for Reckless Rage. I tell you what,
Yeah.
Reckless Rage, Ledger Shredder, both look incredible
Yeah, that was
in that
impressive
game.
stuff. Yeah, chat saying potentially Jesse played 2 lands a turn there. I'm not sure that that's accurate. There was a Steam Vents discard to Ledger Shredder. I don't know if two actually made it into play. There was definitely one played and one discarded. Um, I don't know. The game ends in their favor. Max and Vidi unable to keep up. So one game to the good in Pioneer. Let's find us some more action. I know that Legacy is still playing, but let's go ahead and go to Modern.
Yeah, Modern's got to be still playing too.
Yeah.
This star-studded finals has no shortage of fair decks that like to win a long game. As it looks like Zoe doing her thing with her Living End deck, putting a bunch of creatures in play. We'll see what Andrew can do about that. How about a lightning bolt on the Grief? Going to
Yeah.
take care of that one before the Grief happens. Eternal
Yikes.
Witness going to hit the bin. Looks to be a pretty rough spot for Andrew.
Yes, it certainly does. I mean, this Living End deck, I've been impressed in its ability to combat a variety of archetypes. It's not just strong against work. Creature deck, obviously it's going to be great because Living End clears the board and then loads up. But against control decks, it has put in a lot of work also. These Griefs help, and it's just the timing. I mean, this wasn't even a flash Living End. I don't believe this one was just a Charlotte's Agent. But there's the Teferi, a
Yeah.
turn late.
Oh my gosh. And Zoe, an embarrassment of resources of her own. She's got a Force of Negation. In addition, she's got that Colossal Sky Turtle, one of the powerful channel cards from Kamigawa
Mm-hmm.
Neon Dynasty. Gonna look to go ahead and force that to Fairy. That does remove a little bit of the clock, picking up something like a Curator of Mysteries and just cuts down the clock a little bit. Zoe can afford to take care of that, as she knows Andrew's last card, an island. You've got to be worse cards than that off the top of your library. Let's go ahead and just get you dead. We'll make you have one draw step. And if you don't got it, then that is one dead Andrew Ellenbogen. As here
Yeah, and
comes a crunch
you're saying
for.
Sky Turtle in hand, so blockers aren't going to cut it here. Incarnations could potentially buy Andrew a turn here, but let's see. There's an iteration. Okay.
That looks like how it starts. It looks like we're going to
Oh,
read my
wow.
force and force that. Absolutely not. No spells for you, says Zoe Reederman.
Yes, indeed. Colossal Sky
Pitch
Turtle
this.
doing all kinds of work. Bounces off the board, regrows from the graveyard, picks
All
up the
right,
Force
I
of
get it.
Negation,
No spells for me. We'll go to the next game.
and Zach Allen up a game also. So 3 game across the board. The team of Robkin, Zederman, and Allen wins game 1. Well, Ellen Bogan, McVitie, and Spiegelmeyer have some work to do.
Absolutely. A sweep in game one's looking very good for the team of Reederman, Robkins, and Allen. Some impressive stuff, some impressive
Mhm.
magic played here. No mirror matches to be found, so all players look to be very, very well versed into their individual matchups and their individual seats. Some tight magic being played here. A lot on the line, and if you're Reederman's team, you got to feel pretty good about how things are going so far.
Yeah, or if you're a Reederman's team fan, I mean, being up a game across all 3, and they were the lower seed as well. So all
Yeah,
3 of them,
almost
I believe
certainly.
all 3 of them won the draw. That is tough.
That's very tough. It's
I've
very tough. They
actually
got to be
we've
feeling
had
pretty good.
conversations about changing because traditionally in team formats, the higher seed gets choice in all 3 matches, and we felt like that was maybe too big of an advantage. So we discussed changing it so they'd only get choice in 2. I don't believe that has been actually implemented, and yet 3 games on the draw. I mean,
They don't need
that
it. They don't care.
yeah,
Joe, change it however you want. They don't care. They're going to win no matter what. They got
apparently
it.
so. They don't need the help.
Absolutely.
So all 3 matches are sideboarding. Thank you for joining us here at Nerd Rage Gaming today. Once the finals are over with, we generally would like to interview a player from the winning team. However, with the modern event already in swing, those players are probably going to be transitioning over and finding seats to get ready for modern. So I don't know that we'll get an interview right away, but we'll try and fit one in later in the day, as the modern event is going to be running all day long. 9 rounds of Swiss. There were, I believe, 302 players registered, and they did just begin about half an hour ago. So probably the players in the finals will receive a bye if they're interested in playing in the modern event. Okay, Pioneer is drawing their opening hands. Let's go ahead and go back down to the match, and we'll see if Jesse Robkin is able to double up on Max McVitie and take down the first match for her team. McVitie looking for a good start here. Also, I mean, rule spells that can deal with growing fly. I mean, these flyers, these ledger shredders. I mean, maybe you can deal with them at 3 toughness, but once they're at 4 or 5, I mean, they're kind of out of reach.
Yeah, that's very, very true. And, we've seen Jesse normally, if you have 3 or more toughness in this format, the Izzet decks have a lot of trouble getting rid of you, but not Jesse. She's got Reckless Rage in her deck, and we've seen those be, actually just overperforming in basically every match she's played on camera. They've been fantastic removal spells, kind of functioning as 1 mana terminates in her deck, always have a creature in play that will either grow from prowess or will just survive the hit. Something like a Ledger Shredder, which have also looked very good. A pickup from New Capenna. Potentially, this Ledger Shredder card looks to be, to be pretty good in Eternal formats, Joe. You've been tracking Streets of New Capenna cards all weekend, and it looks like, as of right now, Ledger Shredder kind of leading the pack as far as power level
Definitely.
goes in the
It has
Eternal
definitely
formats.
shown up a lot. We've seen a variety. We've seen a couple different triomes. We've seen struggle. We've seen unlicensed hearse a few times. Actually, that is another card I feel like another 2-drop that is going to see play in multiple formats. But Ledger Shredder is leading the way. Jesse on a mulligan here to 6 at the moment.
Looks like consider Odawara maybe one of the Spikefield Hazard lands among the bunch. Not the cleanest mana, but works. Max going to go ahead and lay down both cards tapped. We know what we're doing here. Untapped Den of the Bugbear. Going to cast Monastery Swiftspear and crunch in for the first blood point. And Jesse going to go ahead and play River Glide Pathway and pass the turn back to Max. Here's an attack. Don't even need to play my land. Let's get the easy part over with. Beat you up for 1. As here's another Den of the Bugbear and an Eidolon of the Great Revel.
That Eidolon has the potential to do an awful lot of damage to both players in this match. It is being asked in the chat, where can you find the deck lists? And it's all on MTG Melee. My understanding is that they were unavailable to the public during the Swiss, but once the Swiss ended, which we're currently in the finals, so obviously we're at that point, they should be open. So every deck list in the event is now viewable on MTG Melee. The link is in the chat if you want to go check out what's going on in the final deck list or any other player or archetype that you're interested in throughout the
Absolutely.
field.
And Jesse looks like she cast her consider in response to Eidolon. Definitely want to do that one before that one enters play. Went ahead and played a land, passed the turn back. As here's a Monastery Swiftspear. Ow, says Max. I'll take my 2 damage for that one, but I think this one's going to do more damage to you than me. As here is the Kumano enchantment, going to do a point to Jesse, 2 points to Max, and going to trigger prowess for both Monastery Swiftspears.
All right, attack for 6 here. That's a pretty sizable amount. And well, Jesse may have something to say about that. Ether Gust, okay. Ether
All right,
Gust
I'll
on
take
the
my
Eidolon.
2.
So that's nice. Yeah, Jesse will take 2, but Max took some damage from that also, and getting it off the board is a good start. But incoming damage is starting to mount here, and Max will have to choose now where to put this Eidolon.
It looks like, the Eidolon, certainly the one that Jesse needs to get rid of. A big problem for Izzet decks all across every format they're available in. Looks like there may have been some kind of question about. It looks like there's some kind of judge question being asked at the moment, and Aether Gust might have some issues. Gonna go ahead and talk that out with the judges. Once again, we do have judges on site watching the match. They know more than me. We'll get updates when we have one, but for the moment, looks like the players are discussing something.
All right, so it sounds like the Spike Field
Was that played untapped? Is that what
double
happened here?
side was played untapped. So that's another issue. Yeah, Jesse may need to just take a moment here. This has been a couple. Forgetting the opt, forgetting to resolve the opt, and then
That one's pretty detrimental.
Yeah, yeah.
You got to draw your card off opt. Spikefield Cave does not enter untapped like its Shatter Skull smashing partner and or any of the pathways. Easy to confuse for the pathway. Those arts look very, very similar. So pretty honest mistake. This is a high pressure match. Both these teams, hungry for those points for the NRG Championship, hungry for the trophy, hungry for the money. There's a lot on the line. It's easy to make some mistakes and those nerves are high. So we're gonna get this resolved. Like I said, we have judges on site that should be able to take care of this and take any and all appropriate action, and then play will continue.
All right, let's go ahead and jump to another format while this is sorted out.
We're back to Zach Allen and Clay
into
Spickelmeyer. Once again, Volcanic Island Tribal in play, this time featuring some basics as well. Unlicensed Hearse, a card you were mentioning a little earlier for Clay Spickelmeyer in this matchup. What do you think of that, Joe? Legacy.
Some legacy, I'm a believer. I think Unlicensed Hearse, maybe we can pop that up. Yeah, there it is. A new card from Streets of New Capenna, a new vehicle, which my friends and I disagree on how high of a pick it is in limited. I think it's pretty much an auto first pick. They don't think so. But anyway, an impressive card. Actually, you want to know how impressive this card is? It carried Slivers to a top 8 in the Legacy Challenge online last week. A Legacy deck, 20 something like 20 land, 39 Slivers, one unlicensed hearse, made top 8.
Don't forget the Aether Vials, Joe. You need some Aether Vials.
Yeah, there were Aether Vials
Come on,
also.
come on.
But
Why are you
more
such a
importantly,
sliver hater, Joe? I
unlicensed
love
hearse,
slivers.
just
They're so
a
sick.
a card that grows, that deals with the graveyard. I mean, graveyards matter in, a variety of formats in a variety of different ways. And, we know Zach Allen plays Days Undoing, so the ability to reshuffle back in your graveyard and retake advantage of your spells all over again, not going to happen here.
Absolutely not. And there might be some Snapcaster Mage, various other synergies. A
Yeah,
Mystic
there could
Sanctuary we
be
know among the bunch.
Savine,
So,
Savine's Reclamation is a card that sees some play in
exactly.
Legacy in these style of decks. So, yeah, just shutting that down and then also building it what looks like currently is a 3-power attacker if Clay gets around to crewing it.
I
Also, it
really
can
like
target.
that about this card, Joe, is you
Mhm.
can bring it in these control style matchups as what appears to be a sweeper resilient, hasty threat. Right. So, like, not only do you get that graveyard synergy, we've seen things like Relic and Progenitus be relevant in fair style matchups where you both care about your graveyards. You can kind of eat theirs while keeping yours around. And if you need to
Mhm.
cash it in for a card, you can. This kind of does the same thing Relic and Progenitus does, except it's better for decks like Is It Delver, where you care about having a threat density. You have
Mhm.
this now. If I'm sorry, if Zach answers the Dragon's Rage Channeler in play, there's a potential for Clay to be able to just like play something like a Murktide Regent or what have you, crew, and then get some damage in right away
Yeah.
from this thing that's also answering the graveyard. And that versatility and granularity there between those two options, I think, provides a lot of stock in this matchup for
Mhm.
Unlicensed Hearse.
And even though your own graveyard is a resource, Clay does remove 2 cards, and now this hearse is a 5/5. So, like you're saying, yeah, if Zach Allen taps out at any point, bang, this hearse can just crash across for a fair amount of damage. And Clay with a lot of cards in the hand here, a Bolt, a Forest, a Daze, among other things. So, very capable hand right now. Zach Allen also quite a few cards in hand, and we'll see what else happens here. There is a Savine's Reclamation in Zach's hand, so that is one effect that the hearse has had. And here it comes in attacking for 5.
It looks like Zach going to quickly fetch. Looks like a Wandering Emperor. Almost certainly going to try to take care of that Unlicensed Hearse, while you still can. Looks like
Yeah.
a Day's going to take care of that Wandering Emperor. Absolutely not. And Zach's going to go ahead and pick him up there. That is not going to be a position he can recover from. And that'll be game number 2 of the Legacy match here in the finals
Mhm.
of NRG.
Yeah, the first game for McVitie, Ellenbogen, and Spickelmeyer in the match. They're finally on the board. Now we're going to switch over to Modern, see where they're at.
Oh, it was the first game. Wow, they just finished their first game. There's a lot of wastelanding going on in that game. I
Okay, so we're going to go back to Pioneer here. And just to let you know where we're at, a lot of tournament veterans will know this. 3 game rule violations will upgrade to a game loss. Jesse now has received 2. So certainly needs to be a little more careful going on. I mean, I understand there's pressure going on, playing for yourself, playing for your team in the finals of an event, but proper play is required. So
looks like the
we
Aether Gut's going
see,
to go ahead and still take care of that Eidolon of the Great Revel, Odawara as the land for turn, 3 mana that Jesse has access to. Has a lot of work to do, though. Still at a reasonably high life total, but Spell Pierce not doing a lot against all these creatures that are already in play. Looks like a Ledger Shredder among the bunch. Definitely where you need to start. Get a blocker out. Let's get a Consider follow-up. This, of course, allowed because the Eidolon no longer in play. Going to resolve the Connive first. Can't imagine you're super interested in all of these spells and need to grow that extra point of toughness. Probably Spell Pierce going to hit the bin. There we go. That'll be an extra counter. And then we're going to go ahead and resolve this Consider. Going to surveil a mountain to the yard. Draw follow-up. Didn't get a good look. Land already played. Passing of the turn to Max McVitie, who we do know left the Eidolon of the Great Revel on top. So that's, I believe, going to be coming off the top for him. As here comes a very quick attack for 2 damage. I like this attack a lot, Joe.
yeah, I
Are
mean,
you
this is
rocking?
this puts Jesse the test here. What can you play around? What do you worry about at 8 life? It's questionable whether this attack can just be absorbed. And just for there was a question in the chat on what actually happened in the legacy game. like Drake was summarizing, the Wandering Emperor came down, was dazed, and so Zach Allen conceded. That was how that ended
Correct.
up. It wasn't a lethal attack, but Zach Allen decided, you know what, I'm not going to be able to overcome this, so let's just go on to game number 2.
It looks like there's a little bit of discussion on whether or not we should block here. This is, of course, this is the kind of spot that Max exactly wants to put Jesse in. It's like, all right, like you're at 8. This attack looks pretty rough for you, and you only have a Ledger Shredder to block. Of course, you can grow at a point on the next turn. I've cast no spells, so you don't even know if you're getting a trigger on my turn. And any creature I play, if all I do is play one creature, gets a counter, and that would be really bad for you. So, what are you going to do? Are you
Mm-hmm.
going to block? Even if you block, all I have to do is play a spell, and I don't even lose my Swift Spear. And here is a stomp. That's a good one to have. Prowess triggers. That's 4 toughness. That kills a Ledger Shredder. 2 damage going to come across to Jesse, putting her down to a very precarious 6, but no Eidolon of the Great Rebel. So Jesse has the potential to string together a series of spells to try to catch her back up here.
All right, so Sprite Dragon to start with, Treasure Cruise for the full delve. We'll put a counter on the Sprite Dragon, and
Counter.
this,
3 cards coming.
yeah, well, they're gonna have to be a land and another spell, I think.
A lot of
And
Steaments and Spire Bluff Canals. Not the
yeah,
lands you want to be staring at right now. Where were those Spire Bluff Canals earlier?
all right. So if there's a Steam Vents, which would put Jesse down to 4, Sprite Dragon would grow on a spell, so it's not a guarantee that Jesse would die this turn, although it is looking pretty shaky.
I think this is one of those darned if you do, darned if you don't
Yeah.
situations, Joe. If you can't shock in a land because then you're just taking 2 damage. Like that's just so much damage when there's another hasty creature coming. There's still an Eidolon among the mix, and you're gonna get locked out of spells very fast, and
Mm-hmm.
you're already way behind on board. But if you just play a tap land, all you have is a 2/2 to multiple monetary Swift Spears and a huge, onslaught of attackers. It's a tough spot for Jesse. We'll see exactly what she decides to do, how she decides to sequence things. Of course, even if she loses this game, there is another game on the play, so
Mm-hmm.
not completely out of out of contention here, but definitely a tight spot for Jesse. Looks like she is going to elect a shock. It's the best I got. Here we go. Please don't
Yeah.
have 2 burn spells, says
I mean,
Jesse.
okay, so here is and there is a Reckless Rage. Okay, so this is going to grow the Sprite Dragon again, pick off one of the Swift Spheres, and now, yeah, if Max doesn't have anything, Jesse
Well, we
will
know
at least
Max has a
survive the
couple
turn.
spells. We know there's an Eidolon. We know there's
Right.
an On an Adventure Bone Crusher Giant, both of which do add productively to the mix. Burn
Mm-hmm.
spells, clearly the most scary thing here, I think, with Jesse at 4. Any 2 damage burn spell that can go face threatens to finish her off right here. A lot of good draw steps for Max. And no ways
Yeah.
to gain life in the Is It colors. Max has plenty of life to work with. I can't help but think that Max probably has multiple turns to find something,
Mm-hmm.
but doesn't have forever. As things like Sprite Dragon and Ledger Shredder grow very quickly, can threaten to end the game very quickly. But Max, once again, way ahead in the life race.
Yeah, and this is something where, I mean, Jesse knows that this is super precarious, but there's just nothing else to do. You're not going to just concede the game. So just play it out. Take
I'll
one.
light up the
Take,
stage. A very good follow-up for Max, as here we see looks like Soul Scar Mage, Bone Crusher Giant among the mix. Here's an Eidolon of the Great Revel. And this is going to be a tough spot for Jesse, as we know there's Bone Crusher Giant coming next turn. There's an Eidolon already in play. So you can't really play any spells when you go to 1. You get one more spell. One more spell for the rest of the game. Better be a good one.
well, Treasure Cruise gets around the Eidolon. I mean,
We
it
already
currently
cast one of those,
costs
Joe.
6
We don't have
mana, but at least it wouldn't kill her. That's the
That's true.
best we
That's
could say
true.
right now.
You can draw more spells that you can't cast, Joe. That's the way you drew it up right
Yeah,
there.
I mean,
That's the Is It way. I can cast
yeah.
my draw spell, but then I can't cast anything I draw off of it.
I mean, I remember that from countertop days where it's like, yeah, you can resolve Treasure Cruise, but if the 1s and 2s are covered, none of your spells matter.
Oh, there's one other spell. How about we buy Gigantha? We can play
Sure.
that one on our following turn, and that does do the blocking. If Max draws nothing but blank cardboard for the rest of the game, which does not look like he's going to do, as here is I believe, Stomp from Exile.
Mm-hmm.
Here's a little bonk. That makes two power creatures, which with Jesse going to 1 should be lethal. Here's an attack. Make a block. I am dead. Here we go. Let's have a game 3.
Okay. So, fast and furious we go. This first Cyborg game is doing a little better for McVitie, Ellenbogen, Spickelmeyer. And we're coming back to us.
You're
Welcome
beautiful,
back
Joe.
into our little
We just
virtual
wanted to see
booth
your face. It's
here.
been too long.
Yeah, just ignore Drake's ears. They don't exist. What you guys
Ears?
don't get to see is during between rounds when Drake turns around and walks somewhere, gets up from the desk and walks away, he just like teleports out of existence as he
And disappear.
gets towards his virtual office walls. Anyway, thanks for being with us here today. We're going to go back down to modern, it sounds like. So let's go ahead and keep the action rolling.
And
We see a
here we
couple
go.
striped
Zoe. Every time we
river
pan
winders.
over, Zoe's just got a pile of things in play. What's going on with
Yeah,
that? Just
yeah.
creatures in play all the time.
Yeah, these Teferis though cause a problem, but yeah, they're just not making it into play soon enough. We can see there are 5 land in play for Andrew and only 3 for Zoe, so she's sort of short a few land drops here, but not short on 5 mana hexproof or 5/5 hexproof creatures.
Well, three is the magic number for this living end deck, Joe, as all of the cascade effects
Mhm.
that do cascade into the namesake living end do cost 3 mana. Of course, they don't work under Teferi. Have to imagine that card came down after the fact. Now, if I'm not mistaken, I wouldn't mind getting Striped Riverwinder up on the screen. I believe that card has hexproof. Is
Yeah,
that
it
correct?
does.
So a
Yes, it
5/5
does.
hexproof, especially two of them, probably some of the better cards in this matchup, as not only do they attack very well, they're some of the more sizable things. You can't answer them with effects like Solitude. You can't combine any kind of Fury stuff. You have to just battle them in combat, and that makes them a very potent threat to get back from living in this matchup, even over other options.
Right. All right. So Icewind Quaddle flashes into play here. Does not have Death Touch again. That just seems to be what these things do. Is they're just 1/1 cantrips a lot of the time. And Andrew trying to figure out some blocks. These creatures dying is not the worst thing in the world, although it does look like all the damage is going to come across. Solitude and Icewind Quaddle are both creatures that are pretty decent to come back from Living End.
Very much true. I'm not necessarily clear what's in Ellenbogen's graveyard at the moment. It
Yeah.
looks like Zoe has access to a subtlety among some other options. Does go ahead and take Teferi off the table. A heads up thing to do if you're not winning the game in like, one or two attacks. It looks like it's going to take multiple with like Solitude having lifelink and stuff like that. You need to get Teferi off the table in case things go very wrong for you,
Hmm.
because you have access to cards like Force Negation, Subtlety, and even just another living in that you may need to cast. Well, Teferi stops all those things. So, very heads up, go ahead and take care of that Teferi, even though, it's very tempting to go ahead and try to get Andrew dead. No need to get greedy with it. Let's just get Teferi off the table, as here comes an Eternal Witness. Zoe, you're going to survey the options. Look like it literally just Teferi and Expressive Iteration. 2 copies of each among lands in Andrew Logan's graveyard. Land likely not the card to be selected, given how many lands he already has in play, but you never know.
Hmm. Yeah. And down to 9 life now. So if Witness is resolving here, subtly in hand for Zoe, but 1 short of being able to hard cast it, as well as a dead living end until a grief is drawn. Teferi is the pickup for Andrew. Fetching and recasting it, going down to 6, potentially
Precarious
8 if
life
there's a
total.
basic. Yeah, if there's a basic, there
Yeah,
it
you
is.
have to
Okay.
imagine he grabs a
Yeah.
basic here. These striped
Mhm.
Riverwinders, very, very large. And despite Solitude having lifelink, still need to do some stuff like combine multiple creatures in order to make any kind of even productive blocks, as here comes a Teferi. Remember, the only card I think that one can pick up is that Minister. Is it Minister of Inquiries? We're going to go ahead and
Yeah.
respond with a
Alright.
Subtlety. Subtlety can hit creatures or Planeswalker spells. So that is going to work against Teferi. And going to be a pretty crucial play here. Even Teferi being able to go on top is a huge tempo swing with Zoe able to get another attack in before that Teferi can even come down, and things like Force Negation can stop it entirely on the following turn.
Yeah. This looks like it's pretty close to the end. Pioneer is starting up. Alright, we'll have chat. If you want Pioneer, put 1. If you want Modern, put 2. I'll go with whatever gets voted twice first. So, let's see it.
Joe, I've never seen you relinquish so much control over the stream.
I don't have to follow what they say. Alright, we got 2 1s first. Pioneer. Let's go.
All right,
So we'll
let's finish
swap
up
over
the
to
Pioneer
Pioneer. We'll
match.
keep you updated on what's going on here.
We're already in the thick of things. Fiery Impulse, a very powerful effect, being able to take care of a Bone Crusher Giant early in the game due to Spell Mastery. Going to deal 3 damage instead of the traditional 2. Jesse's mana looking somewhat painful. The Shivan Reef, probably not the land you want to see in this particular matchup.
All right. Well, chat, I don't know if I agree with your choice here, as that modern game looked like it was winding towards a conclusion, but here we are. Double Kamano faces Kakazan for Max McFeety and Jesse Robkin.
Soulscar Mage.
Yeah. So on
2
the
mana
board
up.
here.
Have to imagine that representing some amount of spells that can be cast that will prevent that stomp in Max McVitie's hand from actually dispatching of this Soulscar Mage. Question is it worth, getting the 2 damage in, and then you get to untap, play a very large Bone Crusher Giant, given both of these counters coming off this Kumano, and it does make Jessie use her mana on her turn, which is somewhat productive for Max after he's seen things like Spell Pierce and
Mhm.
Aether Gust in her deck in the post sideboard games.
Yes, indeed. Okay.
So I think we're thinking on end step here, whether or not to cast any of our spells, Stomp or potentially whatever the other card is. Looks like Max, I like to just go ahead and untap. Let's take a draw step here. Have a look
Two
see. Roll
double
both of these
Kumano
up. Thank you
rolling
very
up here.
much.
So that's I mean, the next creature that comes to play is gonna be quite large. Yeah,
How
there
about a
is
Bone
Bone
Crusher
Crusher
Giant?
Giant.
How about
Uh,
an Aether Gust?
yeah.
That'll trigger that prowess. And here's Kumano faces Kakazan? I
Yeah,
really hope I'm
Kumano
saying
facing
that right.
Kakugan. Yeah, okay, there well,
We're
does
going to
that play
respond with a play
yeah.
with fire, which will take care of the Soulscar Mage. No counters, actually, for Max McVitie out of those 2 triggers that you see there on that second chapter. But that third chapter will flip both of those Kumano Faces Kakazan, and they will be 2/2 hasters to be able to attack. But this Ledger Shredder threatens to block very well, as here is a Treasure Cruise follow up. That Shivan Reef, though, continuing to do extra points of damage.
Yeah, the mana base seems pretty good, but there is a little bit of damage here and there between Steam Vents and Shivan Reef as 3 I'm sorry, that's the connive. Took me a second to remember the name of the mechanic, and now we'll get to
We just
draw
call it a
3.
loot, Joe.
Yeah, I know. That's the go-to. But for newer players, I suppose, loot isn't just a automatic term that you recognize. Although now we've got loot, we got rummage, we got connive.
We got it all, Joe.
Yeah, we
Magic's a very
do.
complex game, as both of these Kumanos are going to flip into their 2/2 haster enchantment creature back halves. The back halves not legendary. The front half's not legendary either. However, this Ledger Shredder posing a very impressive defense as it does. A 2/4 flyer. Going to be able to profitably block any of these 2/2s that choose to attack, maybe have to force Max into some kind of 2-spell situation with something like Stomp. And that actually might make Jessie not block. Because on the following turn, if there's a 2-spell turn for her, we get to see that grow to a 3/5. The Ledger Shredder will become a 3/5, provided she has a spell to discard. Looks like there is no shortage of those in her hand. And then the Stomp that she knows about will not finish off the Ledger Shredder alongside one of these flipped 2/2 hasters.
Yeah. Okay. So in chat, the question about the Gigantha, which we saw discarded to the Ledger Shredder connive ability, and I had the same thought that it seems rather early in the game for the Gigantha to have been picked up. Could have happened, or maybe it actually was just left in the deck and drawn as normal.
Well, either
Nothing
way, it looks
wrong
like
with
the
that.
the mode of Gigantha in this deck certainly seems to be discarded to connive, and
Yes.
Jesse's done a very good job of that in both of these sideboard games.
Yeah, I feel like that's what companions do. In Modern, they get picked up and discarded incarnations or exiled incarnations, and yeah, maybe the new thing now is discard them to Ledger Shredder.
Discard him to Ledger Shredder. You can do that in every format, Joe. Discard your companions to Ledger Shredders. Welcome to it. Here we go.
Okay,
Looks like we're
so
really thinking on this block, and I
yeah.
don't blame Jesse at all. This is a block I would have to think about for a long time. There's a lot of cards that Max could have. We know there's 2 cards in hand. We do know one of them is the Bone Crusher Giant that can threaten to stomp, and so she needs to think hard about what the texture of the rest of this game is going to be, because this is a lot of damage to come across. You're
Mhm.
taking 4, going to 7, with Max having 2 good cards in hand. This light up the stage, flipping another Bone Crusher Giant and a
Ooh.
Lava Coil. That
Now
Lava Coil looks to do some incredible work here against the Ledger Shredder. Not at
no,
all,
it's
I'm sure,
not.
Jesse wants to see.
The lava
What?
coil is worthless against a Ledger Shredder.
Is it not flying?
No, it would be the second
Oh,
spell
it's
of the
the
turn.
second spell,
Yeah.
Joe.
So
I
light up the stage
see.
actually not the best
Well, you can still do it on
card.
the following turn, right? But then
Yeah,
she gets a chance to put a counter on
right.
it still.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, Lava Coil would need some help then. I'm sorry. But alongside the stomp on the following turn could finish it off. But that is way worse, like you alluded
Yeah.
to, than just being able to take it off this turn. Ledger Shredder looking really good there. That threatened almost like a roll of law effect. Like you would want to cast either a Bone Crusher Giant, right? Or the
Mhm.
Lava Coil, but you just can't.
Right. Okay,
Wow.
so here's Shredder number 2, and then consider and yeah, these creatures are growing. Now this lava coil will be able to take off a new Shredder on Max's next turn. So here is connive number 1. I suppose it is important to indicate as Jesse is doing which
Which one it
connive
is, yeah,
trigger
because
goes
you
with
need to
which
know which
creature
one
because they are
grows. You can't
different
just hit
sizes.
connives.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So now we have a 3/5 and a 1/3. So Lava Coil doesn't line up perfectly with either one if Max
true.
does choose to cast it. And now we have to consider itself.
Yep. Looks like we graveyarded a Steam Vents, drew a River Glide Pathway, which will be played on the front half. Look, is that all four of them? Sick. I mean, those are the lands you want to
Yeah.
draw. The Shivan Reef might not want to be, might not be, but the River Glide, Lava Glide are the lands you want to draw in this matchup, as they do not deal damage to you like the Steam Vents do, and they don't intertap like late game Spiral Left Canals do. And we're going to see Max probably make good use of his cards, as here comes Lava Coil, but an Aether Gust going to very quickly take care of both of those. And if Max has anything to respond, the Ledger Shredders are going
Yeah,
to
this is
trigger, of
so
course.
irritating. You're right. The rule of law was an apt comparison. It's now Max has to think, okay, if I play anything here, Jesse's going to get 2 more connive triggers. Looks to his left to Andrew Elmo was like, hey, can you believe this crap? Man, Ledger Shredder, what the heck?
Ledger Shredder, this card's unreasonable.
Why aren't you playing these in your 4-color Yorion deck?
You should be playing this card basically everywhere. I mean, this is the power of Ledger Shredder. This is the power of Jesse Robkin's deck. As you know, she brought Is It Prowess here, a deck we haven't seen as much of, but Ledger Shredder has just been an impressive addition to this deck.
Yeah, and the pace of this game is slowed down as Max again is just like, go. I'm
All
not
right,
playing a
fine.
second
You're at
spell.
5.
Yeah.
I have plenty of great draws in my deck, but these flying blockers make it extremely annoying to try to attack through.
Mhm.
And here is a Fiery Impulse going to take care of the first Saga flipped creature from Neon Dynasty. Treasure Cruise, an impressive follow-up, going to trigger Connive for both creatures. I'm sure she'd love to have the cards before these Connives go off, but you can't have your cake and eat it too, Joe.
Yeah, well, she's doing just fine as it is. Yeah, removing one. Okay, Max has come back here. All right, blast you for 2. Why not?
Put you to 3
Yeah.
before you could draw any potential spell pierces or counter spells or whatever. Do you want the third Ledger Shredder, Jesse? I have to imagine the answer is no at this stage of the game, but you never know. Expressive Iteration, maybe not as good when you know you have 3 cards coming off this
Mhm.
Treasure Cruise. You know you already have plenty of card advantage. Do you want more threats? That is the decision that we are making here now.
And there is somewhat a shortage of red mana that's not Shivan Reef. I imagine Robkin's not going to want to use that Shivan Reef for
Can't
pain
imagine so,
anymore.
especially not a precarious 3. And if you
Yeah.
think about the damage Shivan Reef has done this game, I mean, it matters so much in this particular moment, right, Joe? Like there's if she had 1 or 2 more life, like that's an entire card for
Yeah.
Max almost. As we do see the Spell Pierce actually drawn off the second Connive. That one is, of course, kept on the second Connive ability. Counter going to come for the second Ledger Shredder, but Max very heads up casting that Stomp
Mhm.
before any of these, different filtering effects or draw card effects could happen. As here comes a potential attack from a Ledger Shredder. You have to end the game eventually, Jesse. You can't sit here and take draw steps with Max forever. That's not a winning strategy. Den
Yeah,
the
and
Bugbear,
the
tap
lava
land
coil
can help
the
potentially.
lava coil's on the top of the deck, I believe. So that Ledger Shredder is vulnerable, and if it's going
And
to get picked off
yeah,
anyway,
should
then may as well
attack.
attack with it.
I like it. I like it.
Although, if that's the case, then when the Kamano attacks and the big Ledger Shredder blocks it, Lava Coil could kill that one. So, yeah, I think being conservative here is the right idea for Jesse. And Max is now, I feel like he's drawn this Lava Coil for like 4 consecutive turns.
Aether Gust, a powerful but annoying card for
Yeah.
sure. And there's some tension here with Max wanting to cast these Bone Crusher Giants that are on adventure. He has 2 of them now on adventures, and that looks like where he's going to be reaching at
Mhm.
this moment. Just kind of begin to build up a board. Jesse still in a very precarious life total. No real need to fire off any of your spells quite yet. Let's make sure that we can get a nice profitable attack in before we start firing off our removal spells. But that does give Jesse time to cast things like this Expressive Iteration that she kept off of the Connive triggers. And of course, Expressive Iteration does a very good job at triggering Connive itself.
Yeah. And drawing a mountain off the top isn't the worst either, although this is actually a bunch more land, including a Reckless Rage. So that's
Reckless
another
Rage, a
spell.
good one. Targeting Bone Crusher Giant, not a good one, though.
Yeah. So this is going to be, land into hand, rage into exile to play this turn. And I imagine we'll see that mountain played from Jesse or potentially a tap land. But you know what? We're going to see a whole bunch of nonsense because there's more conniving to be done.
Oh, plenty of conniving. Jesse does a lot of conniving, it seems, in this particular game. And looks like there may be a response here. Going to respond with
It's a
I,
red cap melee, I believe.
red cap melee.
And
That
that gets
eat
spell
the
pierce.
spell pierce.
Yeah.
Absolutely not, says Jesse. I would like to connive now, thank you. Treasure Cruise number 3 among the bunch. Yeah, red cap melee does 4 damage at instant speed. Target creature planeswalker. If it's non-red, then you have to sacrifice a land. Max would have had to sacrifice a land had it resolved. It did not. So does not have to sacrifice a land.
All right. So graveyard
Yeah.
rebuilding again. I believe that's Den of the Bugbear alternate art, of course.
Oh, it is. Yeah, there you go. Second one, going to be a Steam Vents. Not really good at this stage of the game. Does leave that Ledger Shredder still vulnerable to the Lava Coil that we know about, but
Mm-hmm.
I think she's kind of written that one off basically no matter what anyway, as
You know
here
what?
comes a follow-up.
No reason to wait for next turn. That treasure cruise there. Maybe that's going to get fired off now. Looks like just lands plus the cruise in hand.
Perhaps thinking about how much she wants to delve out. Maybe wants to
Mm-hmm.
leave some mana up, but could also just tap the lands here. Also, I do not believe it's played a land yet, so we can play a
Right.
land here to help along with casting that treasure cruise. But she likes to do none of that. I'm just going to go ahead and play my untapped mountain, pass the turn back. Light up the stage appears to be the draw for Max McVitie. Now, getting that spectacle looks like it's going to be actually pretty difficult for Max, given this quite powerful defense of our rare from Streets of New Capenna, Ledger Shredder. A lot of toughness on that card, Joe. As here comes the lava coil targeting the one that has 4 toughness. Heads up.
Okay, so that's out of here. Max finally gets that lava coil out of his hand and off the top of the deck. And so we're considering here that light the stage, yeah, it's tough to it just kind of invites conniving. Now, Sprite Dragon getting to
Sprite
play
Dragon with Treasure Cruise follow
yeah,
up and a connive trigger to boot. That's kind of the way you want to do it. This Sprite
yeah.
Dragon looks to grow very, very quickly. Jessie at this stage of the game has a lot of mana that she has access to grow this Sprite Dragon. Max still at the very healthy 20, does not take any damage off of his lands, being in mono red. And of course, Jessie being so far behind on the life total race has not yet been able to attack. A Braid discarded to the connive trigger. That one not terribly good against the Bone Crusher Giant, as you can't target that one. That one's going to kill you.
Yeah, okay, but at least there's another creature. That's a big deal. Jesse feel confident to attack here for 2? Yes. All
Yes.
right. And
Looks like
Max
the answer.
somehow still at 20.
Yeah, going down to 18 here with that attack. Eidolon of the Great Revel, a very good draw, going to do a lot to stymie
Yeah.
the attacks from Sprite Dragon. Probably one of the better draws. And I believe Max doing a Aether Gust count here, if I had to take a guess. Looks like 1 has been potentially used, maybe another one in the yard there. Yeah, it looks like 2 has been used. Deck lists are public, not necessarily clear if that's all of them or not, but typically you're hard pressed to play more than 2 Aether Gusts in any given instant
Yeah.
deck.
So Max should be so moving it to the left. So if now that if since Max's left tool hasn't been updated, then I'm curious whether it's actually accurate that he's actually still at 20 and we've just hit 3. Maybe we can get confirmation from the spotter if that's actually the score.
I have to imagine it's 3 to 18 here. I can't
Yeah.
imagine that he has any ways to gain life, as here comes a 3 mana play, perhaps a light up the stage.
Mm-hmm.
Could look to maybe he was doing a spell pierce check too to see if that's going to get spell pierced. A second land off this light up the stage, which we do find immediately, will allow him to cast his Eidolon of the Great Revel, which unfortunately could grow the Ledger Shredder, but I think it's something that Max wants to do nonetheless, and he agrees. As here comes Eidolon of the Great Revel, a loot going to come off the top. I'm sorry, a connive trigger going to come off the top for Jesse. Now,
Mm-hmm.
she does have the Odawara to check this Eidolon of the Great Revel. That will painlessly take it off the table for a turn. But she doesn't have long after that. And she still can't target the Bone Crusher Giant because I believe that card says spell or ability. So, kind of really treading the line very, very carefully here. Going to go ahead and discard a land and
And I
maybe
think
a response.
yeah, I think an opt was actually acquired, and that's actually nice because it allows the Sprite Dragon to grow before
Before
the
Eidolon enters
Eidolon into
play.
play.
Exactly. And we're going to bottom a Steam Vents there, it looked like. And random card coming. Spell Pierce off the top. Could look to be pretty good here, even with Max having 5 lands. It remains to be seen, though. I think that card's very quickly expiring.
Yeah, especially with Eidolon making its way into play, it looks like. And well, we're still responding. Here is oh no, okay, we're not responding. This Eidolon is in play.
Is that a
And
is that a Flame Blast Bolt? Looks like a Flame Blast
yeah,
Bolt. And that is her second spell,
right.
perhaps looking to trigger the Ledger Shredder
Max is like, wait a
for
minute.
herself.
This Ledger Shredder does more stuff? What's going on here?
Yeah, more text, Joe. It doesn't stop. It just keeps doing things. It keeps growing. Now it's what, a 6/8, sure, whatever. One
So now
toughness off of being pretty
are
nice.
we looking at 10? Wait, so the Eidolon's dead, I think.
Uh yeah.
Yeah.
The island's dead. I believe it's also exiled.
Yeah,
Not
I
sure
think
that
so
that matters,
too.
but I believe it is also exiled. And Jesse looks to be at 1 with a 2-turn clock. Den of the Bugbear does offer to block that Bone Crusher Giant, but that Kumano Face Kahakazan does 1 damage, right? That's lethal.
Yeah, and there's also a Den of the Bugbear in play for Max. But yeah, so that's hmm. All right, so the modern game 2 has finally ended with Andrew tying up the match. So we're actually even up
Jesse has 2
across the
spell pierces, but that's not good enough because Max has
board.
5 lands.
Yeah. Well, it could be, I mean, 2 spell pierces is 2 spells, so it would be spell pierce, connive. Hope to find something?
hope for a third or what have you.
I
Here
don't
comes an
know.
attack with Sprite Dragon.
Yeah.
Yeah, gonna go ahead and get that Eidolon exiled. Thank you. Get that out of here. Here comes 4 damage. Max down to 14. Quite a discrepancy from being at 1. And a passing of the
Yeah.
turn. Max, eager to take a draw step. What does Jessie have? She left herself dead to that Kamado Faces Kakazan. Do I attack with Den or do I play my Kuano? All right, I'll spell pierce that. Trigger that. I may wait. We're thinking about things potentially in response to the Sprite Dragon trigger. Oh, we have a Rending Volley.
Oh my gosh.
Don't cast a Rending
Oh
Volley.
my gosh!
All right.
Um,
Wait.
no, that was yeah, that's right, that's right. It's a response to the Kumano. And here's the
Oh,
second spell
sure.
pierce. So the Sprite Dragon is gonna live because it's gonna
The Sprite
grow.
Dragon gets to live.
Yes. Oh, she set a trap for Max McVitie here, and he fell right into it.
Oh
And
my
this
gosh.
Kumano
And
is
Ledger Shredder's going to discard another Ledger Shredder, go to
gonna get
6
countered.
power. Kumano has 2 spell pierces on it.
Yeah, it's out of here. Rending Volley is not counterable, I don't believe, but it doesn't do enough damage to kill the Sprite Dragon, which is now a 5/5.
5 plus 6, 11, 12 plus Den,
Okay.
13. Okay, well, it looks like Jesse's a bit short, but a spell here could close the game out. As here's an
Oh!
op fired off very quickly. Gonna put a counter on Sprite Dragon. We need another spell here to close the game off. Let's see. It looks like that is a Reckless Rage. We can't well, can we? Can
Can
we
you
cast that
can you
targeting our
Reckless
own
Reach your
creature?
own creature?
I don't know.
I don't either.
Looks like either way, she doesn't want it. Not a lot of cards left in deck. Random draw off the top. Here is
Ah!
a Play with Fire to go face, and that would do it, Joe.
And then wow, what a game! And that's it. That's a lethal attack. That was fantastic.
What a match!
That was
Jesse laid a trap for Max. All he had to do was cast his Kamado Faces Kagazan, pay for 2 spell pierces. He wins the game. Instead, tries to go after the Sprite Dragon response and gets destroyed. What an
all right.
incredible game.
We that okay. So there's some questions in chat. We'll try and clean up exactly what happened there, but let's go ahead and go down to whatever an active match is. Okay, we're gonna move over to Legacy. So just to recap that. So
Wow.
it was Kumano was cast with 4 mana open. Spell Pierce in response. Rending Volley on the Sprite Dragon. Second Spell Pierce targeting Kumano, not targeting the Rending Volley. I think that was some confusion. So there's 2 Spell Pierces on Kumano. Now only 3 mana left. Counters added to the Sprite Dragon. Conniving on the Ledger Shredder allowed the Sprite Dragon to survive the Rending Volley. Kumano gets countered by the double Spell Pierce. Bone Crusher Giant cast from Adventure Zone, and then Jesse untaps and manages to find a lethal attack. That was pretty sweet.
That's awesome, Joe. There's a lot of times where you talk about, whatever, a lot of plays being scripted. You hear players say all kinds of narratives about how there's nothing they could do, but it's awesome to capture moments like that on camera where if all information is face up, players just cast their spells. There's no way Jesse can win. And instead, Jesse laid a trap, found a line, And because of, Max trying to take care of that Sprite Dragon, didn't think she had the second Spell Pierce after having cast, one in the yard. Didn't think she had two more in hand. She gets to leverage that, the fact she does, and find a win where there wasn't one. Incredible stuff. As here's a supreme verdict to take care of all of Clay's creatures, which is probably pretty good for Zach having two Planeswalkers in play.
Yeah, generally.
What's that enchantment on Clay Speckelmeyer's side of the table there, Joe?
I was gonna try and dig that up before you asked me,
Well, now I'm asking you.
but it is.
Well, it looks like it's getting bounced by Teferi either way. Not necessarily clear exactly what that card
Okay,
does.
here it's Maddening Hex, so we can pop that up.
Yeah, I need to
The
know what that
curse.
card is, Joe. That's too
What's
new
that?
for me.
Oh, all right.
Oh,
So
it's gone
maybe
now. It's in
we can have
hand.
our director bring up Maddening Hex. It's a Dungeons and Dragons card, I believe.
And looks like Teferi going to finish itself off to pick up the Maddening Hex. Zach still has a Narset in play. Looks like a flashback of Savine's Reclamation. Going to pick up the Mystic Sanctuary to Daze. That's a cute trick out of the new builds of Delver that now feature a Mystic Sanctuary. Being able to pick up the Mystic Sanctuary using that Daze and be able to do it again. Of course, Zach has infinite mana to pay. That's just to pick up the Mystic Sanctuary is the move there. But that is going to return a second copy of Narset from the yard and return a Teferi into play. And Zach seems to have this one pretty locked up with an embarrassment of riches. And if he does, that will be the match for his team here in the finals of NRG Minneapolis. As here comes a second copy of Carpet of Flowers. Those each make 3 mana.
All right, so Maddening Hex, real quick, since we didn't get it popped up. It's a curse. Whenever a enchanted player casts a non-creature spell, roll a 6-sided dice. It deals damage to that player equal to the result of the roll. Then attach Maddening Hex to another one of your opponents at random. Well, in that case, this is just a
so it's just
two-player
like
game.
an Eidolon effect.
So
That's
it's
really
just
cool.
an Eidolon effect for a d6's worth of damage each time around.
But
there
it
it
does 3
is.
damage on average, right? So that's pretty good. It's a little better than an Eidolon. And it's one-sided. That's quite a powerful option. And we have seen the Delver decks play Sulfuric Vortex in the past. This is a really, really smart upgrade and a clever inclusion from Clay Speckelmeyer here. Looks like maybe on upkeep we're casting. No, this is second main. We've gone to second main. We made the 3 mana off the new carpet, and we're casting a Wandering Emperor to make a 2/2 token with Vigilance.
Well, Clay Speckelmeyer's got a lot to deal with now. The triple Planeswalker package with 2 Carpet Flowers just to generate a gajillion mana.
And here comes that Mystic Sanctuary we saw picked up off the Daze for a expressive iteration. Gonna go ahead and recast that Maddening Hex. Zach looks like his hand features a copy of Fluster Storm. Does not counter Maddening Hex. Does have the Prismatic Ending to take care of it though, and 3 Planeswalkers can of course just downtick the Teferi. This one seems fairly over here, Joe. I mean, is there anything that is it Delver deck can do to come back? I mean, Zach is at 5 life. Maybe something like a Price of Progress out of the sideboard could do enough damage in order to finish Zach off.
Perhaps. I mean, that would have, at this point that would be a draw, but that's better than losing. As Spickelmeyer, I don't think
at 9. It puts him to 1. He can live.
Well, he's going to get attacked with a samurai here, I think. So yeah, I don't know. It's just looking pretty crappy for probably Spickelmeyer. There's also Swords of Plowshare, so Zach would have an opportunity to gain some life. Although with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 non-basics in play, I think that would probably be too much to overcome. But yeah, I don't know if Zach is looking too vulnerable here. His hand is packed. Spickelmeyer, what can you do?
Oh, we forgot to activate one of the Planeswalkers. They're so foiled, Joe. It's easy to forget, which ones you've activated, which ones you haven't. You're just blinded.
If you have foil Planeswalkers, shouldn't you get like foil dice or something in order to go with them?
Yeah, I think you need foil duels too. I don't know how to make that happen, but I'm sure somebody can make that happen. I'm going to go ahead and Swords to Plowshare as my token on my main phase. The
no risks being taken here, which is understandable as this game will take down the tournament.
Here's Expressive Iteration, Flusterstorm. The response from Zach Allen. Response from Clay potentially can't do that. There's a Teferi.
No, we just paid for it.
Okay, yeah, I see. Pyroblast among the other cards does do some amount of work to answer these onboard Planeswalkers. A lot of threats that need to be cleaned up here.
Yes, indeed.
It's like Clay maybe already has the land in hand. Definitely has the land in hand. Going to play Volcanic Island, cast a Pyroblast, targeting the Teferi Time Raveler. Going to take care of that one. And land has been played, passing of the turn. Wandering Emperor and Narset still in play for Zach Allen. Looks like another copy of Narset the pickup.
Wandering Emperor
Make a
does a
million
lot.
mana. That's
Did
10 mana?
Yeah, I was just gonna say 10 mana from Carpet of Flowers is ever so much. Zach
Here's
Allen
a
made
here's a Teferi. I have 8 mana left or whatever. It's just the cast. Here's another Narset. Why not? Here's more foil planeswalkers. How about that?
all right.
I'm gonna
Narset
blind
Legend
my
Will
opponent.
himself looks at 4 cards, finds a Force of Will.
Oh, and a
That's
force of will. And that card's gonna
that's
do a lot.
it.
And Clay says absolutely not. Can get through a lot, can't get through that force. And Zach Allen's team is going to win this game, match, and tournament here in Energy
Wow.
Minneapolis.
Yes, the squad of Jesse Robkins, Zoe Reederman, and Zach Allen does win the Nerd Rage Team 10K in St. Paul, Minnesota. Congratulations to them. Very exciting games. Particular, I'm going to say that Pioneer ending was hot. That was so
That was
cool.
so incredible. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the kind of stuff that when you look back and you assess Magic as, a very, very skill intensive game, there's that nobody finds that play. I'm sorry. There's like whatever. There's a bunch of people watching this tournament. I would not have found that. I'd be like, all right, I'm dead. Whatever, pass the turn. Like I would not be sitting here trying to think of a way to navigate 2 spell pierces. Like maybe I'll play it out, but I'm thinking I'm dead. My body posture is going
Mhm.
to show it. And I'm here to tell you right now, almost everybody in chat, everybody here watching, you, me, almost all of us would not have found a way to win that game, but
Yeah.
Jesse certainly did. And an incredible performance from not just her, but her entire team, and well-deserved victory here in Minnesota. The first, you said it's the first energy in Minnesota too.
Yeah.
What a way to round that one out,
Yeah.
huh?
And I mean, we don't hear the table talk. We don't have the players mic'd or anything, but you wonder, it was like, okay, here's Kumano. Are you dead? It's like, all spell pierce. Okay, whatever. I don't care.
Okay.
Trigger my Sprite Dragon. Oh, wait a minute.
Oh yeah, I can kill that
Burning
one.
Rending
I'll get that
Volley.
out of here. Why not?
Wow. That was very cool. We had some great games here this weekend. Hope you're enjoying the coverage. Remember to follow if you're having a good time. If you're asking for my immediate opinion, the 2 best games to watch were the winning in Pioneer game in round 7 yesterday and the concluding Pioneer game in the finals. So if you want to go back and check out 2 games from this event, those are the 2. Surprising to me, at least, that there are, Pioneer games. First time we've ever had Pioneer at Nerd Rage, and it delivered.
What a debut. Wow. Some
Yeah.
really two really cool decks there in the finals. I feel like if you asked me or anybody else what the 2 decks in the finals for the Pioneer section would be, it's hard pressed not to include a copy of the Naya Winota deck.
Uh-huh.
And there was no copies of Naya Winota in sight. And
Yeah.
instead,
No.
the Izzet deck, not a Phoenix deck, a Prowess deck, and then Mono Red. So 2, impressive performances from I would say a little under the radar decks.
Maybe
And
not anymore. Yeah, I mean, the
yeah,
format's still
definitely
developing.
not anymore.
And I mean, Pioneer is definitely, I mean, it was popular for a few months on inception. I feel like we can fairly say it died out for about a year and has come back in the last several months. So there's innovation to be had. It's already been happening, and I'm sure it will continue. Okay, so here's what's going to happen for the rest of the day. Well, you know what? First of all, let me just go through a couple housekeeping things we're going to put up. Prizes. So we'll see what the players just won. So we'll show you what they got. The prize pool for the team 10K. All right, there you go. So the team of Riederman, Robkin, and Allen take down first place. Spickelmeyer, Ellen Bogan, and McVitie finish second. All right, now back to us. Questions in the chat about where are the upcoming Nerd Rage events? I want to maybe go to one. Let's put up the schedule. Let's go through them real quick. We'll do this more this afternoon. Here we go. Next event, Lansing, Michigan for the first time. Modern 10K, Pioneer 5K, our first individual Pioneer event. After that, Mundelein, Illinois. It says Chicagoland. This is the Chicago area. Our events, the home base is Mundelein, Modern 10K, Legacy 5K. That is the end of July. After that, we have our next showdown, Team Showdown, as well as a Modern 5K. That's at the end of August. We also have the Season 3 schedule. We'll put that up there. You can see if we're coming anywhere near you. That event, by the way, was in Missouri. And then we're coming to Newark, Ohio, which I didn't know there was a Newark in Ohio until yesterday. There you go. Fort Wayne, Indiana, back to Chicagoland again, and then in Louisville for the first time, somewhere somewhat more southern in December, where the weather gets a little cool up in Chicago.
It's my
Now,
country
other
down
things
here.
to
Heading
take care
south.
of. We've got a modern 5K running the whole rest of the day. Round 1 is probably finishing up. Actually, you know what? I'm going to guess they're probably in round 2 at this point. Anyway, the first round we're going to watch is going to be a round 2 match. It sounds like it's about ready to go. So, in order to switch the graphic package from the team event setup to the individual event setup, the stream will have to drop. You can go ahead and stay in the channel. We're going to take a break. The stream will reset. It's just going to be a momentary thing. We'll come back up, and we've got Modern all day long. So, if you enjoyed the Pioneer Modern Legacy action and you're done, you're out of here. Thanks for being here. If you want to see some Modern, stick around. Drake and I'll be here. Drake will be here for most of the rest of the day. Then we'll have Becky Bellin for a little while and Will Kruger to finish it up. I'm Joe Lissette representing NRG Gaming. We'll be right back.